Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. All right. Wait a minute. What is going on here? Here we go. That's a little bit better. Sorry for being a little late. I was scrambling, trying to make this on time, trying to take care of a few things here and there, right before starting. And I still didn't do all the things that I wanted to do before this live stream, but that's okay. We are here. Welcome back to another episode of Classic Trials. This season going through the Menendez trial. It's another Menendez Monday. I have to sing it, right? Now I feel like I'm almost feeling like it's going to be bad juju if I don't sing it. I don't know. I don't know what's up with that. But good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is watching, wherever you're coming from. I hope you're having a great start to your week, whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening. I did not think through that sentence before I got there. I was like, how am I going to finish this? But anyway, I hope you guys had a good weekend. I hope you had a good week last week. I know I didn't see you guys last week because I was out on a trip with Mr. Bites. We were in Spain. I posted one picture from it. And that's about it. I see that Andy is in the chat. Hi, Andy. How's it going? Good to see you here, even though you're referring to Harvey. So thanks for the super chat. Andy says Harvey hates tardiness. I understand that. I don't particularly like Harvey. I don't know Harvey that well, but from what I have seen, I don't like him. If anybody is unfamiliar, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about here. Harvey is a new character who popped up in Andy's latest video on his channel. He's got a series where he and David from Prototopics and Mark from Attractive Nuisance, the three of them, they review these B movies that are just awful. It's terrible, but the conversation is always hilarious. And the movies are so bad that they're good, quote unquote. But anyway, Andy always, one of my favorite things is Andy always has these funny intros that, having been a part of one of these episodes, I can tell you have no idea what he's up to. And he's just like, yeah, just roll with it. And Harvey is a character that popped up during the last intro to the last episode. He is a hand puppet. And I have a feeling you gave him the name Harvey because it's like the other Harvey that most people know of, not Harvey Dent, but the one that we've talked about on this channel. Anyway, so yeah, Andy, I appreciate that, but also I am not one for Harvey's opinion. So good morning, everyone. So we've got some good evenings here from Nico Persianian. I'm sorry. I've already butchered it. Persian, Christina Rain. Good morning. I know I'm just trying to pull some of these up here that I can see. KP, good morning. Elise Lynch, good morning. Gwendolyn SS. Hello, everyone. We've got Shireen, one of our mods who is putting out a bunch of links and stuff up in the chat. So for folks, wonderful to see. Thank you so much. And we've got some testimony to go through today, but before we do, I know folks have tagged me about this on Twitter, in comments on Instagram and elsewhere. There is some news about Menendez. This is not just like a historic case that's dead and gone, this is one that the Menendez brothers like at this point, like I feel silly even saying like spoiler alert, because like at this point we've talked about it so many times on the channel that that they were convicted in the second trial. The trial that we're watching is the one that ended up in a mistrial. And then they had one that was not televised where they were convicted. And so they've been trying to appeal that conviction kind of ever since. And so far unsuccessfully, obviously. But recently there was news that let me share the screen here just to kind of talk about it. There was, first, before I do that, there was the news about one of the members of the boy band Menudo, who came forward and said, I was assaulted. Well, he used the R word by their dad, by the Menendez father. Jose Menendez, and basically just like came forward out of nowhere. And I had a feeling, I was wondering if anything would follow from that, from the brothers and from their attorneys. And sure enough, yeah. Which this is interesting. I don't like. Let's read through the article first, and then I'll give some of my thoughts, and then we'll get back into the testimony and stuff. But I felt like I should be talking about this, right? Because it's like so many folks have been interested in it, and this is just it's interesting. It's recent. It's new. Okay, so this is from CNN. It says attorneys for Menendez brothers claim new evidence could overturn life sentences. New is a little bit of an interesting word for this evidence, but we'll get into that. It says attorneys for brothers Erik and Lyle Menendez, who were convicted of the 1989 murder of their parents, say new evidence shows the convictions and life sentences should be overturned, according to court documents filed Wednesday. At their high-profile trial decades ago, the brothers did not deny killing Jose and Kitty Menendez, but argued that they should not be convicted of premeditated murder because they acted in self-defense after enduring a lifetime of abuse by their father. The brothers were retried and found guilty in 1996 after a first trial ended with jurors deadlocked. In a habeas petition filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, the brothers' attorneys say that a letter sent by Erik to his cousin 8 months before the murders shares details of his father's abuse. The petition also says Roy Rosselló, I think it's Rosselló, right? Because I think I've seen it elsewhere with an accent mark over the O. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. Usually someone in the chat knows these things, who was in the Latin boy band Menudo in the 1980s, says he was raped by Jose Menendez, who was an executive at RCA Records. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, which prosecuted the two trials in the 1990s, told CNN in a statement, "We have received the habeas petition in the Menendez matter, and it's currently under review." Womp, womp, womp. That's basically what we'd expect them to say. The letter from Erik Menendez to his cousin Andy Cano in December 1988 says, "It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now." So in other words, like that's definitely suggestive. I'd be curious to see that the whole letter here, but we'll get into more from it. But it seems like that first line that's pulled from the letter seems to be suggestive that they had this conversation previously. And then I guess he continues, "He's so overweight that I can't stand to see him," the letter says. "I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. He's warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. Am I a serious wimpus? I don't know I'll make it through this. I can handle it, Andy. I need to stop thinking about it." The letter was discovered by Jose Menendez's younger sister and Andy's mother, Marta Cano, who shared it with the journalist Robert Rand in April 2018, who then shared the letter with Erik Menendez's former appellate counsel, Cliff Gardner, the same month, the court document says. A review of court records shows the letter was not presented at either of the two trials, the document says. Gardner also discovered last year that as part of a documentary, Rosselló said in an interview, he was, I'll let you guys read that. Oh wait, it's tiny script. Sorry. 1 second. Here. He was, a lot of things. So this is what Rosselló said in an interview, that these things happened to him by Jose Menendez when Roy was only 13 or 14 years old. While he was in New York City performing shows, the document says Rosselló shared the assaults in a sworn declaration in an exhibit filed with the habeas petition. So he's like dialed in with the brothers, that he's like saying this under penalty of perjury. He's not just coming to the media and saying that, making allegations to the media. He's actually then signing a sworn declaration, which is the same thing as testifying under a trial. You have the same consequences for lying under oath. The attorneys argue these two pieces of evidence counters prosecutors' narrative that Jose Menendez was not violent or the type of person who would abuse children. In short, the new evidence not only shows that Jose Menendez was very much a violent and brutal man who would sexually abuse children, but it strongly suggests that, in fact, he was still abusing Erik Menendez as late as December 1988, just as the defense had argued all along, the court document says. Attorneys are asking the court to either vacate the conviction and sentence against the two brothers or permit discovery and an evidentiary hearing when they can provide proof, the document says. CNN has reached out to the two attorneys for comment. So, obviously the first thing to think about with this letter is, there's a number of things that we can think about here with this letter. Number one is, if it didn't come in at either of the two trials, why didn't it? Because presumably someone would have known about it, right? Because if Erik wrote this letter, he would have known about this letter. He would have known about its existence. I have questions as to why this wasn't brought into the first trial. Did the legal team not know about it? Did Erik forget about this letter? If this letter from the article here, it seems to suggest that the letter was written almost contemporaneously with when the killings happened. So if the idea that he would forget writing to his cousin about that is I don't know. Granted, there was a lot going on at the time, but in the time leading up to trial, especially by the time they had a second trial, I would think that someone would have known about this letter. So to say that this is new evidence that was not known about is a little bit difficult. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's a little bit difficult for me to believe that no one knew about this evidence, particularly Erik, because like I said, he's the one that is supposed to have written this letter. And I would think that like the family, like the cousin to whom he wrote it, also like why didn't he speak up and say like, hey, wait a minute, like you sent me a letter. I wrote back. I responded to your letter. Like we had multiple conversations about this. We haven't seen the defense's case in chief at this point in classic trials. So I don't know if this cousin, Andy Cano, if he ended up testifying, or if something happened to him and he wasn't able to testify. At the same time, there's also a potential hearsay issue here. Anytime we're talking about some kind of a document or anything, we've got hearsay problems potentially. If it's being offered by the defense, it's not exactly a statement by a party opponent. It's by a party. And what they're doing is they're using that to try to bolster the credibility of the witnesses who are saying that they were abused by him. So you've got to figure out a way to get that in through some kind of a hearsay exception. I understand the relevance of it. It's highly relevant. But there's still that hearsay issue. So this is not a home run situation. I still have questions as to why now? Why, it says in the article that it was found in 2018. But I mean, or it was shared with a journalist in April 2018. But when exactly was it discovered? I see, let me see here in the chat. Was it Menendez Trials here who said something about it being found in 2003? Sorry, I saw that float up, and then I didn't catch it. But I think said it was 2003. I don't know if that letter was also part of the previous failed attempt to appeal this case too. Because we're doing this one step at a time, and I'm trying not to cheat by looking at the end. Okay. So here's I love to pour says the letter wasn't found till 2018 because Andy died in 2002 and all his stuff was stored away till 2018. Okay. See, I can understand that. I can understand that. But then between 1993 and 2002, what explains that time span? Or, I mean, really 1989 to 2002, really, because, for it to be shown at trial. There's still some questions about, whether or not this is something that can actually make a difference. So yeah. And Bright Eyes also says people should watch the documentary on Peacock to understand why the Menudo kid didn't come forward. I mean, yeah, I haven't seen the documentary on Peacock, but I mean we've talked about these issues before with DV, sexual violence, that kind of stuff. Sometimes it takes a long time for somebody to come forward because of all of the emotional trauma that's involved in the underlying event. So it doesn't surprise me that that Rosselló came forward this late in the game. It happens. It happens. We see that from time to time. And I'm not. So the other thing is, I never want to accept an allegation as true right away. I'm always going to take it and evaluate it, in the full scheme of facts. So, but it is very, very interesting for that information to come about, and to see that, combined with this other letter. We'll see where this goes. We will see where this goes. I mean, I'm definitely interested in tracking it. But I wanted to share that with you guys because I thought that was very interesting, to see that there's potentially movement in this case. How crazy would it be if it actually got overturned while we're like in the middle of this, or if it got sent for a new trial? Like, how crazy would that be? So anyway, okay. You guys ready for some more testimony? Let's do it. Let's do this one. Okay. All right. And okay, let's get to it.
And give you a chance to speak with the witness, and then we'll resume at 11 o'clock. Counsel wanted to have some brief testimony in regards to evidence being offered by the prosecution.
Don't worry, it's not Oziel, Gamer Ducko. We're out of Dr. Oziel land. And it's publicized. Yeah. Like, all right. If it's broadcast, I would. Yeah, 100%.
Your Honor, everything that I put in motion with respect to the spending evidence, if this witness is relevant to any of those items, then I guess that's not.
All right, let's go. Come on. Let's put them on.
Ooh,
Step forward, please.
ooh, got some annoyance from the judge. This is, by the way, just before this, I was able to skip through like an hour and a half of back and forth on evidence and testimony and all this kind of stuff. It was outside the presence of the jury, so that's why, we just skipped over it. But judge might be a little bit annoyed right now because of, that whole conversation. He's a little impatient this morning, it looks like. Look at that tie.
Stephen Goldberg, Goldberg, Stephen.
Mr. Goldberg, what do you do for a living?
I'm an attorney.
And do you know Erik Menendez?
I do.
How do you know Erik Menendez?
Erik Menendez is a named beneficiary of the estates of Jose and Mary Menendez.
Ooh, is this the estate
and
attorney?
I am the attorney for the executors for those estates.
Oh, it is.
As the attorney for the executors of the estates, did you have occasion to give advice to Erik Menendez shortly after his parents were killed?
Yes.
And specifically with respect to investments, did you advise Erik Menendez in that respect?
Yes.
Did you advise Erik on the idea of buying real estate?
I did.
Okay, and what was your advice to him in that respect?
In numerous conversations with Erik and also with Lyle, I indicated to both of them that I thought it would.
Excuse me, Your Honor, as to my client, I'm going to assert the attorney-client privilege.
Well, I don't know if we've had anything established that he is the attorney for either defendant. He seems to be the attorney for the estate.
Yep.
So there's been nothing established that there is a attorney-client privilege at issue here. Did you want to?
Right, because that's what happens when you have everything go through the estate. This is okay. So this guy is basically like Jeff Goldblum in Grand Budapest Hotel, when you have like the older lady who dies, and then suddenly there's a will, and then like the second codicil to the second will. You have all this stuff going on, and he has to explain to the children, the adult children of the wonderful lady who passed away, that he represents the estate. He doesn't represent the children. He doesn't represent, even though they are probably the largest beneficiaries of the estate, or the prime beneficiaries, you could say, of the estate. He doesn't represent the beneficiaries. He represents the executor, who is representing the estate. The executor, who's there just to manage all the assets, figure out where everything's going to go. So he represents that person. This is like supposed to be in a most disinterested kind of way. So that's why it makes it interesting in terms of something like attorney-client privilege. Like, does the privilege apply to his conversations with the brothers? No, there's no privilege because he's not their attorney. He's the attorney of the estate.
Could I just inquire as to what this witness's understanding was? Of
Sure.
Status? Sure. Mr. Goldberg, did you have an attorney-client relationship with Lyle?
Yes, I did.
And are the conversations that you're about to go into conversations that took place between you and Lyle Menendez during the course of that attorney-client relationship?
Some of them would be, yes.
I think that's all I have. I renew the claim of privilege.
All right. Why is it that you have a attorney-client relationship with the defendant, in this case, Lyle Menendez?
During a period of time from approximately October of 1989 and continuing thereafter for a period of certainly at least a year, I acted, in addition to acting as an attorney for the estates, I also acted as an attorney directly for Lyle Menendez on a number of occasions in a number of specific matters, for some of which, in fact, I actually presented him bills and which he paid. I
Uh-oh.
had a relationship with Lyle as a business attorney. I assisted him in the preparation and execution of contracts. I represented him with respect to many business decisions that he was making. I also, I think, whether it's separate and independent, but certainly in addition to, had an attorney-client relationship with Lyle from the period of March 8th, 1990, through and including, at the very least, November of 1990.
All right.
Interesting.
Okay, you may proceed. And if there's
Okay.
an assertion of the attorney-client privilege as to Lyle Menendez, then you'll have to rephrase the question.
Interesting. Okay. So I revised what I said in my last comment, because basically, yes, he is the attorney for the executor of the estate. So he doesn't, in that role, does not represent the brothers. But apparently he has given, at various points in time, he has given legal counsel to Lyle Menendez. He's drafted contracts for him. He's done all this other kind of stuff. Primarily, it seems like in a business sort of context. So that makes sense. And it's not really that uncommon for someone that is, say, an estate planning attorney to also be a business transaction attorney too. I have seen that before, and I've seen it done beautifully well, where the practice is thriving and the attorneys are very, very capable. This can happen in trust and estates anyway, where you have one attorney who ends up handling multiple matters for multiple family members within the same family. You can have conflict issues that arise. So clearly, there are some potential landmines for him to navigate here with this particular family, because most families also don't end up with like the two children killing both parents. Ideally, hopefully. Okay. Anyway, let's do, but for me, that the law nerd brain part of my brain, why am I words? That was just interesting to me. Okay, let's continue.
Mr. Goldberg, let me back up and discuss your relationship with Erik Menendez. Did you have an attorney-client relationship with him that was independent of or separate from your representation of the executors of the estate?
Yes.
And, Your Honor, did you give him advice pursuant to that independent attorney-client relationship that you had with him?
Yes.
Okay. And did you specifically advise him regarding purchasing real estate?
I did.
Did you advise him regarding a tennis contract that he entered into with Mark Heffernan?
Yes, I did.
And did you also give him advice regarding the purchase of a Jeep?
I did.
Your Honor, I will indicate that we will be waiving the attorney-client privilege just with respect to the negotiations regarding these specific items: the Jeep, the tennis contract, and any proposed real estate purchases.
Well, I don't know what you mean by solely in regards to the negotiations. I don't know what communications existed or took place between Mr. Goldberg and your client that led up to these transactions. And it would seem to me that if you waive his advice, then you're waiving whatever input he had that dealt with him to give that advice. So you're getting into more than just one brief conversation, it would seem to me.
Nothing leading up to these, but nothing past the time.
No, Your Honor, we are not attempting to narrow it as much as the court stated. We simply would waive the privilege as to any negotiations or advice regarding these specific transactions. We do not wish to waive the privilege for events after these specific transactions, or be put in a position where it is claimed that we have waived the privilege by putting on Mr. Goldberg's testimony on these limited 3 areas.
You mean waiving it for subsequent events?
Yes.
All right. Well, go ahead.
Okay. I have a packet of documents provided by the prosecution as discovery in this case. I'd like them marked as Exhibit 137, please. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. 136, I believe.
No, that was Mr. Bernard's phone number.
Oh, that's right.
We don't know if it was sealed, it was only a request.
No, I believe it was ordered sealed by the court.
Yes, I acceded to Mr. Bruno's request.
Mr. Goldberg, I'm showing you a packet
And,
of documents.
By the way, Debbie Faison Cook, this is an excellent question because you know what I realized? This is not the prosecution doing the direct examination here. This is the first time. This is the first time that we have seen this, which, and I think that we're starting to see some blending between the prosecution's case in chief and the defense case in chief. Whereas, usually in a simpler trial, in a shorter trial, we'll see the prosecution and then like a delineation and then the defense. But this is definitely a defense witness. This is the first witness that we've seen get actually called by the defense. So I think that what has happened here is not all of the witnesses for the prosecution are finished, but because of scheduling reasons, they've decided to start calling defense witnesses. So this is a defense witness here. So we're starting to open up the defense case in chief. So this is feeling a little bit like the Paltrow trial with this, but we'll manage it. We'll manage it.
Documents that are marked Exhibit 137. Would you look at those and tell us whether you recognize them?
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Look at this witness's shoulder pads. Forgot this was also the days of bigger shoulder pads too. Doesn't it look like an oversized coat by today's standards? Oh, Bright Eyes says this is not before the jury either. See, here's something that I was doing before we went live. This was something that was confusing before. And I thought I caught it. So we might be getting a little bit of an evidentiary hearing as part of today's thing. I apologize. I try to skip these out, but this is pretty decent. So this might be for the issue of, it would make sense. It would make sense for this to be in the scope of an evidentiary hearing as opposed to in front of the jury, because we are talking about the privilege issue. They're not going to decide that. That's not something that really should be before the jury. So that makes a lot of sense. The reason why I got confused is because where I started this footage, just before that point, the judge says like, okay, we're going to bring in the jury and then we're going to get started. But then it seems like when it switched over to the new how they cut out the break, the recess, there was nothing saying that the jury was still outside, or whether the jury was present. So I had assumed that they had brought the jury in, but I guess he didn't have that on the record. Now I'm thinking that out loud. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Sorry if I just rambled and lost you guys on that. But yes, I think this is an evidentiary hearing.
Having skimmed through the documents, I do believe I recognize these documents.
And are those documents relating to a proposed purchase of a condominium at the Marina City Club?
That's what they appear to be.
Could you tell me who is indicated on those documents as the buyer of the condominium?
Excuse me, Your Honor, I'm going to privilege claim as to Lyle Menendez because I think the witness is going to go into an area with respect to these documents that is covered by our attorney-client privilege as to Lyle Menendez.
Your Honor, the documents speak for themselves. We can have the court look through the documents.
All right, then you can withdraw the question, ask another one. I believe these are documents that have been presented to me by the prosecution in their offer of proof.
Does your card appear among those documents?
Yes, it does.
And have you reviewed those documents at some prior time?
Yes, I have.
Did you review them back in October of 1989?
I don't have a specific recollection of when I reviewed these particular documents, but that time frame would be approximately correct, and that there's a date on the documents of October of 1989.
Mr. Goldberg, did you?
I need to clarify that answer. I can be more precise, but not without going into a matter of what has been claimed as privilege by Lyle Menendez's attorney. I can explain
All
to.
right, there's no question pending, so ask your next question, please.
Did you
There's no question pending.
encourage
Ask your next
Eric Menendez
He's grumpy. He's grumpy
to
today.
invest in real estate?
Yes.
Objection.
And did you
Objection leading, but the answer.
did you give him that advice for any particular reason?
There were several reasons.
Okay. And did you advise him of the rationale behind your advising him to invest in real estate?
Yes.
And why did you say that he should invest in real estate?
There were, as I said, several reasons. One of the reasons was that I thought it was, and perhaps the primary reason, was to establish some stability in his life, to have a place, to have a home that was not 722 Elm Drive. And also I felt that, perhaps wrongly, that real estate was a good investment, a relatively sensible thing to do. And I thought it was good both from a financial perspective and from a personal perspective for him to establish some roots and to gain some stability.
Did you advise him about areas that he might explore living in?
Yes.
And was the marina area
Objection leading. Overruled.
was the marina area one of the places you encouraged him to look at?
But the Marina Del Rey was definitely one of the areas that we discussed.
Okay. And did you
It's a wealthy area.
introduce
You're
him
not
to
familiar.
any sort of a real estate agent
It's right on the water.
to
You can tell
assist
by the
him
name.
in looking in the marina area?
Yes.
And who was that real estate agent?
His name was Larry Cohen with Fred Sands Realtors in Marina Del Rey.
Okay. Now, Mr. Goldberg, at some point in October of 1989, did you go to the Marina City Club to examine a condominium?
I went to the Marina City Club. I assume that I saw condominiums there, but I definitely went there.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustain, the answer is straight.
Okay. Let's focus on
Let
what.
me inquire, other than what was presented to me in the offer of proof by Ms. Abramson, what is it that you expect to get from this witness's testimony at this point?
Your Honor, I expect this witness to testify that he went to the Marina City Club in connection with a purchase which he believes to have been made solely by Lyle Menendez. That Eric's role in the purchase of the condominium, the paperwork has been marked as Exhibit 137, was simply to write a check for Lyle because Lyle didn't have any money. The paperwork that has been marked 137 is all in Lyle's name. Eric's
All right,
name.
let me why don't you get to that so I can hear that evidence then? Specifically, assuming we don't have some objection by the co-defendant.
Did you go to the Marina City Club with Eric regarding a proposed purchase of a condominium?
Eric was at the Marina City Club when I went there. I didn't go there with him. I did go to the Marina City Club to discuss a purchase of a condominium at the Marina City Club.
Okay, so you met him there.
Yes.
Okay. And was anyone else present on this occasion where you met him at the Marina City Club to discuss a purchase?
Yes.
Okay, and was that person who was present Lyle?
Lyle was present.
Okay. And did you have some conversation that day with Lyle in Erik's presence?
Yes.
And based on your conversation, what is your state of mind as to who is interested in purchasing City
I'm
Club?
going to
Also
object to that-
speculation.
that question on the basis of the claim of privilege, Your Honor. I think it is a privilege. Allow the witness to testify to that.
Well, there might very well have been a waiver since both defendants were present and one spoke in presence of the other, perhaps. I don't know what the issue is. But the way that the question is phrased, it does call for conclusion on the part of the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. What did you see or hear that day regarding who was going to purchase a condominium or who was interested in purchasing a
I'm
condominium?
going to object to the question and assert a claim of privilege, Your Honor, and ask the court if I could lay a foundation to indicate that if there was another person there, he was there for the purpose of furthering whatever business relationship that Mr. Goldberg was being consulted on.
All right, let me ask the witness in general, do you feel that that question asks you to violate a privilege?
It does.
Okay. Mr. Goldberg, did Erik ever express any interest in real estate prior to your advising him that he should invest for stability and to have a place to live?
I don't have any recollection of him doing that, no.
Okay. And did Erik express any interest in buying the condominium that you saw on the occasion where you went to the Marina City Club?
Did you hear Leslie feed her the question? It's so funny how the microphone is so strong that it can pick up these little whispers between co-counsel. Sorry, that was funny. Which it was funny.
Met him there.
Referring to the condominium in Exhibit 137?
Yes.
No. I don't believe so, no.
Turning for a moment to a Jeep that Erik purchased. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
I have some documents that I'm going to mark. I've marked as Exhibit 138. May I approach?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the documents that have been marked Exhibit 138?
Yes.
And are those documents regarding the purchase of a Jeep?
Yes.
Were you with Erik when those documents were filled out?
Yes.
And did you advise him in making the purchase of the Jeep?
Yes.
What was your role with respect to that purchase?
I assisted him in the negotiation of the purchase.
How long did the negotiation of the purchase take?
Several hours.
And what, more specifically, was your role in negotiating the purchase? What did you do?
I went with Erik initially and looked at a number of vehicles, and upon selecting one that he was willing to purchase, we went through the standard process of offers and counteroffers with the salesperson or the sales manager.
We're going beyond the scope here. The bottom line is, as I understand it, this was a decision that Erik Menendez made to buy a Jeep. Is that right? And you were there to advise him some way that he brought a lawyer along to advise him in buying a Jeep. Is that basically what happened?
He decided to buy a Jeep. I was there and to assist him with the purchase to do it as well as possible. I don't think it needs a lawyer to do that, but
Okay. All right, your next, let's go on to something else. This doesn't really prove anything other than that Erik Menendez bought a Jeep.
Okay, and did he try and get the best price possible?
Well, come
for
on,
the
that
Jeep?
doesn't really prove or disprove his willingness to spend money. If he wanted to get a good deal, he got a good deal. But let's go on to something else. This is a 402 hearing, not a trial.
Okay. Concerning a contract with Mark Heffernan for tennis services, are you familiar with that document?
I'm familiar with a contract for tennis services with Mr. Heffernan. I don't know whether an exhibit has been marked.
Okay, I have a contract which I've marked 139. May I approach?
Yes.
Have you seen that before?
Yes, I have.
And did you draw up that document?
I participated in the drafting. It was drafted by my office. Another attorney in the office had primary responsibility for drafting it. I was responsible for discussing the terms prior to drafting and then in making revisions to result in the final draft with respect to the drafting.
Okay. And was that a contract which was from January 1990 to August 1990?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there any particular reason why the contract ended in August of 1990?
My recollection is that in discussing the contract with Erik, Erik wanted to make sure that he had the ability to go to college in the fall of 1990, if that was a decision he made by that time. So it was the August date was to coincide with the beginning of the fall semester.
Okay. And what was your expectation, Mr. Goldberg, as to how the monies that were owed pursuant to that contract might be paid to Mr. Heffernan?
That's irrelevant what his expectations were.
Why don't you rephrase the question?
Okay. How were the monies to be paid to Mr. Heffernan?
Initially, the responsibility for payment would be Erik's. We had engaged in negotiations with a company known as Live Entertainment, which had been extended negotiations for a period of months between the estate and that company. And we had included in a proposal to the company that they sponsor Erik on the professional tennis tour for up to 1 year.
And was it your expectation that the company would in fact cover some of the costs of hiring the tennis coach?
The indication we had from the company was that they were amenable to the sponsorship as part of the negotiations and the deal that we were working out. And clearly, we intended to include at least portions, if not all of the cost of the tennis
That's
coach
a first for that 90s reference.
to the company.
And was this a contract that contemplated that Mr. Heffernan invest a minimum amount of time per day working as a tennis coach for Erik?
There was a minimum time commitment of 60 hours per week.
And did it also provide that he was to work full-time as Erik's coach?
In order to state exactly what the contract says, I would have to read it, but I can certainly testify as to my recollection as to the nature of services to be performed by Mr. Heffernan.
So you're saying this contract was between this company and Mr. Heffernan?
No, the contract was between Erik, and the contract says also Lyle and Mr. Heffernan. The idea was that with the company's acceptance of the sponsorship of Erik, that we would have the company pick up, as I said, some or all of the costs that would be included in this contract.
Is there some document that says that?
There's a series of documents that constitute the negotiations between the estates and Live Entertainment. And those documents do include specific reference to the sponsorship of Erik on the professional tennis circuit for a year.
an agreement to pick up the costs of this contract?
The details of what would be included in the sponsorship were never reduced to writing. The lawyers for the company were asking us approximately what we anticipated the costs would be, and we gave them an indication of the costs which would have included the costs that were picked up in the personal services contract.
And was the potential for reimbursement from live entertainment for the costs of Mr. Heffernan something you discussed with Erik?
Certainly.
Okay, so he was aware of that.
Yes.
Okay. And did you also advise Erik that, in your opinion, it was more than likely that Live would reimburse him
Objection, Leland.
Overruled.
for the costs? Or did you give him any kind of an opinion about how likely this might be?
I don't know that we would have discussed it in exactly those terms. I certainly told him that it was very likely, because we had the indication from the company, it was very likely that the company would accept the sponsorship of Erik for a year, and that we had discussed clearly would include paying these costs.
Okay, and in negotiating the contract, did you attempt to arrive at what you believe to be a reasonable fee for Mr. Heffernan?
We certainly negotiated the contract, I would say, aggressively to get the best possible contract that we could.
Mr. Goldberg, returning for a moment to the Marina City Club, did you and Erik ever have any discussions about his writing a check to as a deposit for the purchase that his brother planned to make?
Yes.
And what discussions did you have in that respect?
Any objective question that calls for privileged communications from my client?
All right, the question has to do with what Erik Menendez said to the witness and what the witness said to Erik Menendez. If you can limit it to that, if it cannot be so limited.
I believe I can answer the question, Your Honor. There was discussion with Erik about making a loan to Lyle.
And that loan was for the purchase of a condominium?
Yes.
And that condominium was the particular penthouse condominium in Marina Del Rey that is reflected in Exhibit 137 that is in front of you. Is that correct?
I'm just trying to think if there's any privilege involved in that, Your Honor.
If you have some doubt about it, then don't answer it.
I'm just asking you
No,
about
it
your
was-
discussions with Erik.
It was definitely for a condominium in the Marina City Club.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time.
Mr. Kuriyama?
Okay. I don't think I don't think we need to go through the cross-examination of this witness for this particular hearing. Let me just skip through, and I think here it's going to be
Your expectation as far as
judge comes down
which
with a
jury will be
ruling.
in
Okay, cool. Well, we can move on then to the next witness here. All right. Let's present the next one. Here we go. So they were trying to get through. Okay, yeah, Debbie Faison Cook. Why did any of that matter? So this was an evidentiary hearing. They were trying to figure out what kind of evidence they can allow the jury to see, and part of that is these various financial statements of a condominium that the brothers had bought, or one of the brothers had bought. You know, Erik Menendez had bought a Jeep. The prosecution is using all of that to say, look at this massive spending spree that they went on. They did this for the money. They did this, because they wanted the inheritance from their parents, basically, that it was this cold calculation kind of thing. The defense wants to obviously rebut that by talking about how, you know, it makes sense for this witness to say, like, yeah, I mean, he bought a condo because I advised him to, because I thought that he probably wouldn't want to be staying in the house, in his parents' house, because of all of the things that had happened there. And also, you know, it seems like it's a generally good investment. It's a relatively prudent investment. So anyway, so you've got reasons why the defense would want this witness to come in, but then there's also some tripwires of going through certain areas of information that are conversations that might be privileged, because he also has acted as an attorney for the two brothers at various times. So yeah, I hope that helps. Okay, let's continue with the next one.
Have anything further to add to what's been presented already in regards to the items of evidence that the prosecution proposes to introduce regarding spending activity of the defendant Erik Menendez? The defense offered this evidence, so let me hear the position of the defense.
Your Honor, Exhibit 137, which is the paperwork regarding the Marina City Club condominium, is entirely in the name of Lyle Menendez, or Joseph Lyle Menendez. The proposed purchase is in his name. Every signature on the documents appears to be Lyle's signature and not Erik's. The only indication of Erik's involvement is in the form of a copy of a check that Erik wrote as a deposit for this unconsummated purchase. The testimony of Mr. Goldberg clearly establishes that was a loan to his brother, he expected to be paid back, and that Erik did not take part in any way in the purchase of this condominium. That this was a purchase by Lyle and not Erik. So given that paperwork, the documents which memorialize the transaction themselves demonstrate that this is not evidence that should be admissible against Erik. The fact that he loaned him money so that Lyle could buy a condominium in the Marina certainly is not anything that we should that should be allowed before Erik's jury. With respect to the Jeep, very briefly, I will submit it. And with respect to the Mark Heffernan,
We're gonna skip through this a little bit.
Deal with his
Okay.
about when
This
there is sufficient justification for this evidence to be involved in the purchase.
okay.
Something to do with when.
Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna.
Salary card.
Fulfilled after the parents died. If he is not readily available, do you have a representative from Marina City Club?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, if she is available, let's have her.
I believe so. It's valid card.
Salary card.
All right, this is just brief testimony. It won't be as extensive as you might otherwise expect. So let's try to get to the point, Mr. Creon.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. So prosecution's witness.
Pardon, I'm going to show you what Mark is. Exhibit 137.
Is this another evidentiary?
You were employed on October 15th, 1989.
I work for the developer selling condominiums at the Marina City Towers. And it was my day on duty.
Okay. On that day, in the afternoon, did you have a couple of customers come in that you see in the courtroom today?
Yes,
Or at least one of them?
yes.
Could you identify that person?
That's Erik Menendez.
Okay. Was he accompanied by anybody?
He was with Lyle Menendez and Noel, and I don't know his last name. I think it was
Can you
Ficati.
describe Noel?
He was tall and thin, young, same age as I would guess Erik is, about the same age. Lightish brown hair.
Okay, that's good enough.
Now, at some point, did
Yeah, this has to be an evidentiary hearing because the judge is like not hiding any of his annoyances. By the way, earlier Shireen gifted one membership to Bike Club. So thank you so much, Shireen. Very kind, very generous of you. And also Kit Kat also gifted one membership. So thank you so much. Sorry I missed that earlier, Shireen. I try to jump on those as soon as I see them. So thank you so much, and welcome to Bike Club. Or I think both of the people that got gifted memberships are welcome back to Bike Club. Okay, let me skip ahead here because I'm quite certain that this is not actually in front of
Lyle
the jury,
Menendez,
and I want to keep this as like stuff in front of the jury as much as possible today. Okay.
House, and even though
This is still
Based on discussions you had with Erik.
okay. Hang on.
It wasn't.
Got to go back.
Yes, I taught.
Back.
Lyle Menendez.
Yes,
Okay, you didn't enter into a contract with Erik Menendez, correct?
that's correct.
His name doesn't appear on any of the documents,
No.
correct?
That's correct.
And you had, in fact, no enforceable agreement with him at all.
No.
Now, is your testimony today,
I remember that.
okay, and
I think this is going
the
to be
purchase agreement,
okay.
Did you wish to be heard further on this transaction?
just that as the witness testified, they indicated that they liked the penthouse, that they wanted to make some changes, I believe, in the penthouse. And even though Erik Menendez's name does not appear on most of the paperwork, he
Okay,
did.
so we've got some argument here.
Inherited as a result. They're entitled, certainly,
Okay.
to Zoller before both.
Sorry,
Before.
guys.
This is
Where is this is also not in front of the jury, I think.
We'll hear this brief testimony and then we'll proceed with that.
Raise your right hand.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand, please.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause of the for the true words, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Just take a stand and state your name for the record.
Mark Heffernan,
Spell your last name, please.
HEFFERNAN.
Okay.
Mr. Heffernan, in August of 1989, how were you employed?
By August of 1989, how was I employed? I was employed by the Menendez, both of the Menendez brothers.
Did you have other students of tennis? Were you the tennis coach?
Now, was this the time that I had the contract already?
No.
Before?
This is prior
Right,
to the killings of the parents. Did
Okay.
you have some kind of
This is not
connection
before
to
the jury
Menendez
either.
brothers?
Yes,
my
I taught
gosh.
them. They were part of my student
This-
load.
Okay.
Might be
About how many hours per week would you teach
okay.
Erik Menendez in particular?
2 to 6.
All right.
What
We're
was
gonna
your
try to skip ahead also.
best
Yeah,
of my
this
recollection.
is all evidentiary hearings.
Yes, I do.
What was it?
Okay, this might also not be in front of a jury again.
For the center
Detective
section
Zoller
here
again.
and get ready, and we'll have first the Lyle Menendez jury in and then the Erik Menendez jury. All right, detective
I should have been paying
jurors out
attention
of the
to what
jury
you just
room
said.
into the courtroom.
Okay.
Contract for the condo that the parents,
I'll have
No.
to fix that.
I can do that in the joint cross-examination.
There is a 402 issue with respect to Detective Zoller in front of the Erik Menendez jury, but we can wait until we get there.
All right, at this point then, let's, unless there is some need to further delay this matter, I want to get these jurors out of the jury room and into the courtroom. All right, so let's proceed then. We'll have to clear the center section here and get ready, and we'll have first the Lyle Menendez jury in and then the Erik Menendez jury.
Okay.
All right.
Finally, some
Detective Zoller
testimony.
is on the witness stand, and you're still under oath, Detective Zoller.
Yes, sir.
And would you state your name for the record, please?
Leslie H. Zoller.
All right.
Detective Zoller, on the first Friday of March of 1990, did you go to a restaurant in the Princeton, New Jersey area?
Yes.
And was that the restaurant which was known to you as Mr. Buffalo's?
Yes,
And when you went to that restaurant that day, did you go with anyone else?
I did.
Who did you go with?
I went with my partner, Detective Tom Linehan, and Richard Winskowski, and his partner, John Aquero, I believe is the spelling or the pronunciation.
It's Aquaro, is that correct?
Yes.
And while you were there, did you make any inquiries about Lyle Menendez?
No.
Okay. Did you make your presence as a police officer there known?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions in front of this jury right now.
Any cross on that
No, Your
subject?
Honor.
All right, then we'll now have the Lyle Menendez, strike that, the Erik Menendez jury out as well, the blue jury, and they'll come into the jury box. And we'll now proceed with evidence being offered as to both defendants. All right, and the Erik Menendez jury is in court as well. And good afternoon to you. And again, I'll apologize for the delay, but give you a preview of what it's like when you are in the jury room during deliberations, at least.
Okay, so now we finally have some clarity. We have both juries in the courtroom for this. I know Shireen said this is so confusing. I agree. It's hard, especially because, you know, at least when it's actually live in front of us and there's no cuts between the, like, we at least have context for time and things like that, time of day and lunch and all this other stuff. So we can make some educated guesses as to what's happening, even if we haven't caught all of the information as to what's happening. You know, we can use context. But with this, it's a little bit harder sometimes when you have these editing cuts through here and there. So okay, but now we are finally settled. We had Detective Zoller in for just like one question or two questions maybe in front of one of the juries. Now we're bringing in the other jury, and now we will continue with testimony. Finally. By the way, Sandra Ramirez, thank you so much for gifting 10 more Legalbytes memberships. To all of you folks that are now members of Bite Club, welcome to Bite Club. I hope you guys can join us along with the other two folks that just became members again. I hope you guys can join us on Friday for the Bite Club member live stream or casual stream where, you know, oftentimes we'll talk about stuff that's happened in the week in law and just kind of casually hang out. So yeah. Okay, let's get back to it.
At least as far as the confinement that you experienced during the deliberations, the fact that when deliberations start, 12 jurors will go into the jury room, and instead of talking about whatever you were talking about today, you'll start talking about the case. So I apologize for the delay, but there were things that the lawyers and I had to resolve, and we're now ready to proceed. We have both juries in the courtroom, and we have Detective Zoller on the witness stand. You may examine the witness.
Detective Zoller, when you first testified in this case, I believe one of the things you testified to was the collection of evidence at the crime scene. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, I do.
And I put up a series of photographs that had some numbers that looked like printed numbers. And the three photographs on the board, which are 25, 26, and 30, are representatives of the photographs that you testified about when you first testified. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, I believe that I asked you questions about collecting wadding and pellets at the crime scene. And do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do.
There were three items of evidence that were collected and numbered at the crime scene, which are depicted in these photos on the board, which were not wadding or pellets. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Number 7, which is shown up on that board, it looks like it's on some sort of blanket. Was that just a piece of white cloth that was collected?
Yes.
And that's exhibited in photograph 25. The next photograph, which appears to be of some sort of sofa or chair with a pillow in it, there appears to be a number 9 and a number 8. I'm going to ask you about just number 9. What piece of evidence is that supposed to depict in photograph 26? What does number 9 stand for?
Number 9 is the handheld portion of a cordless telephone, which you can see just the point of the antenna sticking out to the left of the pillow.
And so that handheld telephone was in fact found behind the pillow, which is depicted in this photograph 26. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the last piece of non-ballistics type evidence that was recovered is depicted in photograph 30. It has a marker next to it, number 16. And I believe there was some testimony about this, but that was just a piece of white plastic. Is that correct?
Yes,
And I think you testified earlier you thought it was part of a bracelet.
that's correct.
Now, moving ahead to another exhibit that I believe we've had some testimony about. This is exhibit number 19. It is a Xerox copy of some U.S. Sprint records. And I believe you testified previously that this is something that you came across in your investigation dealing with a phone call made from the Santa Monica Civic. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And this particular item, exhibit 19, has on it a phone number which was called from that area. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And counsel, will you stipulate that the phone number which is on exhibit 19, which is area code 213-657-8190, was Perry Berman's phone number on August the 20th of 1989?
Yes.
So stipulated?
Yes.
Thank you. I believe you've testified that on the early morning hours of August the 21st of 1989, you became the primary investigator into the deaths of Jose and Mary Louise Menendez, correct?
That's correct.
The following Friday, August the 25th, did you attend a memorial service for Mr. and Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell us approximately what time of day it was and where it was?
I don't remember the exact time. I have an impression it was around the noon hour.
All right, so midday.
Yes.
Could you tell us where it was conducted?
It's on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood at the Screen Actors Guild.
And do you recall seeing either or both of the defendants at that memorial service?
Yes,
How many were there? How many of the defendants?
both defendants were there.
Do you have a memory as to either one of them speaking to the audience during the memorial service?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to approach.
All right, the objection is overruled. The answer will stand, but you may approach.
Detective Zoller, do you have a memory of either one of the two defendants speaking to the audience at the memorial service?
Yes, I do.
And what is your recollection as to who spoke?
Eric spoke at the service.
And that was on August the 25th of 1989, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, do you recall that in 1989 there was a Labor Day, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember what the date was of that Labor Day?
Yes, I do.
What was it?
September 4th.
And that was Monday, September the 4th?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have here two exhibits I'd like to mark as exhibits next in order. I think we're at 140 and 141.
Yes.
Okay, 140 is a copy of a life insurance policy along with an affidavit. And I have two copies of that. And also, Exhibit 141 is a copy of two wills, one for Mary Louise Menendez and one for Jose Enrique Menendez. I have two copies of each of those. Detective Zoller, sometime during your investigation, did you become aware of the fact that there was a life insurance policy on the life of Jose Menendez with the Sun Life Assurance Company of Canada?
Yes.
Okay, and may I approach, please, Your Honor?
Yes.
Through various phone calls, did you cause a copy of that policy to be sent to the district attorney's office this year?
Yes, I did.
Counsel, would you stipulate that Exhibit 140 is a true and correct business record of the Sun Life Assurance Corporation?
Yes.
Yes.
And would you further stipulate that the information contained in the affidavit of Ms. Bonina is correct information?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Just briefly, from looking at this affidavit, does it appear that approximately $325,000 was paid to each of the defendants as a result of this policy?
Yes.
In addition, I take it during your investigation, did you become aware of the fact that there was a will for each of the parents?
Yes, I did.
And the copies that I have here, Exhibit 141, Does this appear to be a copy of the two wills that you were able to discern belonged with the Menendez estate?
Yes,
Counsel, will you stipulate that these two wills are in fact the two wills that were admitted to probate in the estate of Jose Menendez and Mary Louise Menendez?
Yes.
And just briefly, do these two wills leave the estate to the two defendants in the event that both of the parents are deceased?
yes,
Detective Zoller, on December the 5th of 1989, in the course of your investigation, did you go to the Menendez home at 722 North Elm Drive in order to retrieve a computer?
yes, I did.
And were you present when Mr. Whitkin testified and identified a computer in a photograph, which I believe is photograph 63?
I was present.
All right. And did you in fact go into the same room identified by Mr. Whitkin on December the 5th?
Yes,
When you went into that room, did you take custody of the computer, which was in the master bedroom?
yes, I did.
In addition to taking custody of the computer, did you find a document there while you were taking the computer?
Yes.
And could you tell us briefly what the document was?
The document was the receipt of Howard Whitkin with his company name, and I located it on top of the television in that room.
All right, may I approach, please, Your Honor?
Yes, we have again, is this September or December 5th?
This is December the 5th, I'm sorry.
Is that right? December the 5th?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, now I'm going to show you Exhibit 64, which appears to be an original receipt. Is that the receipt that you took from the master bedroom?
Yes, it is.
And I'm just going to briefly show you photograph 63, which is fairly small. That is the photograph about which Mr. Whitkin testified.
It is.
And that is the room in which you seized the computer, which is located at the far corner of the room.
That's correct.
And this receipt, Exhibit 64, where was that within the room?
It was located on the television, which is depicted on the right side of the photo, approximately in the middle of the photo.
Okay, so there's a large it looks like at least a 27-inch TV about, and there's a VCR on top.
That's correct.
And where was this Exhibit 64, the computer receipt?
It was either on top of the television or on the VCR, which is on top of the television.
And after you found that receipt, did you in fact contact Mr. Whitkin on the 11th of December of 1989?
That's when I first interviewed him, was the 11th.
And that was the first time you knew who he was? Or did you know about him a couple days before?
I knew about him a couple days prior.
Detective Zoller, did you ever find any shotguns which were affiliated with this case? Did you ever find the two shotguns?
No.
Sometime during the first full week of March of 1989, did you meet a woman named Judalyn Smith?
Yes, I did.
And subsequent to that, did you write and execute a search warrant at the home of Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
Now, after you spoke to Ms. Smith and you went to Dr. Oziel's home, did you make an effort to locate a store where shotguns had been purchased?
Yes, I did.
Prior to meeting Ms. Smith and the execution of the search warrant, had you made any efforts to locate shotguns?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And briefly, without going into a blow-by-blow account, could you tell us what efforts you made before that time to find the shotguns?
First of all, I contacted Department of Justice, which is the governing agency for federal firearms licenses in the state of California, and I asked them for gun stores in an approximate 10-mile radius around the city of Beverly Hills and Calabasas. I got a printout of those stores, and I proceeded to go to those stores, interview, and go through their gun records.
And I take it that search was fruitless. Is that correct?
That's correct.
After speaking with Ms. Smith and after the execution of the warrant, did your search lead you to the San Diego area?
Yes, it did.
And when you went down there, did you have a list of stores, again, provided by the Department of Justice?
Yes, I did.
And did you concentrate your efforts in locating the store where the guns had been purchased?
That's correct.
How many days did it take you before you found the information?
2 full days with 4 investigators working on it.
And could you tell us how it was that you came to the Big Five store about which Miss Amanda Adams Geyer testified?
Just one of the stores on my list, and I just went into the store.
And what did you do? What did you ask them?
I asked them to explain my investigation and asked to review their gun records.
Okay, now when you talk about the gun records, were those the gun records about which Miss Geyer testified?
Yes, it is.
And going through the gun records, did something catch your attention?
Yes.
What caught your attention?
The receipt with Donovan Goodrow's name on it, purchasing 2 shotguns.
And at that time, you had already been apprised that Mr. Goudreau was a friend of Lyle Menendez, is that correct?
Yes.
So you recognized the name
Yes, I did.
and you seized those records?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have Exhibit 52. I'd like to clerk, please.
Yes.
Exhibit 52 contains, I believe, 3 pieces of paper, but they're marked as 4 because one of them has a backside. Are these, in fact, Exhibit 52A through D, the records that you seized after your second weekend in San Diego, or your second day in San Diego?
Yes.
Now, approximately how many gun stores in the Los Angeles area did you visit before your search led you down to San Diego?
I don't know an exact number. I would just be guessing.
Well, was it more than 10?
It was close to 100 stores.
And when you went to these stores, were you limiting yourself to a certain area? In other words, were you trying geographically, were you limiting yourself?
Yes.
And were these stores that sold shotguns?
Yes, they were.
Did you not go to stores, and did you eliminate stores that didn't sell shotguns?
To the best of our ability before we traveled there, yes.
After you found Exhibit 52 with Donovan Goudreau's name on it, did you attempt to locate the address which was listed in that document, which was 63 August Street?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do? Did you have a Thomas guide?
First of all, I had a Thomas guide and looked up the street.
That's another 90s reference. I remember Thomas guides. I remember my when I started to drive, we didn't, well, I think we started to use GPSs at some point, but we would use like MapQuest ahead of time and like print out the route. But like, I remember my dad teaching me how to use a Thomas guide and being like, you need to know how to do this. Even after GPS was like becoming a thing. And my dad was like, if something happens to all the GPS in the world, you need to know how to read a map. Anyway, so yeah, that brings me back a little bit. Maybe not quite to the 90s, but I do remember the Thomas guide. I don't know if so. Debbie, you say Debbie Faison Cook, you don't remember those. Maybe was that maybe the Thomas guide was a California thing. I'm not sure. But I do remember using them. I had to have one in my glove compartment, according to my parents. But yeah, that I wonder if that was a West Coast thing. But anyway, it was basically this for those of you that don't know, it was like this booklet, a spiral bound booklet with a bunch of maps, and you can see where they're connected, where you're going based on like it's all on a grid. So it was very organized into a particular grid and just in all of these different pages. It had ways of like finding if you're going off the page, like where the rest of that map was. But it was yeah. Anyway, so yeah.
And did you actually go to the street?
And I went to the street of August Street in San Diego.
Did you see an address of 63 August Street?
No. The only 100 block that they had of August Street in San Diego was the 5,000 block.
When you went to San Diego, well, you've lived in Los Angeles for a while, correct?
That's correct.
With the best traffic conditions, how long does it take to drive to San Diego from the Beverly Hills area?
Approximately 2 hours.
That's without traffic.
Now, after you found the gun records in this case down
So it depends on what part of San Diego you're talking about. If it's like the northernmost part of San Diego, 2 hours from like what part of LA too, and what time you're driving, it can take anywhere. I mean, I would say more like 3 hours to drive, but it can take like 5 hours depending on when you go, 5 or 6 hours even. I don't know. It can take a long time. Anyway, that was also, I wonder, traffic did seem to get worse since the 90s. So, maybe there was less traffic
Down at the
then.
Big Five store in San Diego. Did you ever locate the shotguns?
No, I did not.
On March the 8th of 1990, some several months after you first were assigned to this case, I believe you've testified that you participated in the execution of a search warrant at Dr. Ozil's home. Is that correct?
That's correct.
At that time, were tapes recovered from a safety deposit box?
Yes, they were.
And when those tapes were recovered, were they handled as pieces of evidence in a certain way? In other
Yes,
words-
they were.
All right. And could you tell us what happened to those tapes after they were seized?
Well, they were seized as confidential recordings or pieces of evidence, and they were taken immediately into the possession of Gary Mogul, who was a special master.
Okay. Could you tell the jury what a special master is briefly?
We object to this irrelevant.
A special,
Well, could I ask a leading question then?
Yes.
Is a special master someone who attends a search warrant in special situations?
yes.
And did he, in fact, have control then of the tapes after they were seized?
Yes, he did.
In addition to having control of the tapes, did he also take control of exhibits 97, 98, and 99? And I'll show them to you so you know what they are. 97 are various ledger pages about which Dr. Ozil testified in the present, correct?
That's correct.
And then 98 and 99 are appointment books for the years 1989 and 1990. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as well as the tapes that you've testified to, did Mr. Mogul also take custody of these items, 97, 98, and 99?
Yes, he did.
To your knowledge, from the home or from the location where these items were seized, were they then taken to court?
Yes.
And they were not in police custody, is that correct?
They were never in police custody.
Now, the first time that you had access to Dr. Ozil's
Myers Gal 12, yes.
tape
He's
from
been
October
he's been
31st
recalled. He's been here
and
multiple
November
times.
2nd.
It's confusing.
Tell us what
We're-
month and year
We're
that
working
was.
through it.
I'm going to object.
All right.
So, Detective Zoller, on March the 8th, the tape and the appointment books and the ledgers were all taken by Mr. Mogul to the courthouse. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, on March the 8th, was Lyle Menendez arrested for the murders of his parents?
Yes, he was.
And in the early morning hours of March the 11th, 3 days later, was Erik Menendez arrested for the murders of his parents? Or was it the 10th? The early morning hours of the 11th.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right. Cross-examination.
Detective Zoller, as to the photographs that are behind you there, what is item number 8, which is depicted in the photograph in the center in the board next to you and the one in the middle in the board next to the jury that's in the audience?
It's an individual pellet, which is just to the left of the stanchion that has the number 8 written on it.
And is it true that on the night that you were at this scene, that you were the one in charge of supervising the collection of the evidence?
To a broad sense, yes.
And in the broad sense of documenting where it came from and writing up the reports that documented the specific locations where the items were?
No, I did not do that.
Did you prepare a report which indicated the items of property that were taken from the residence that night?
If you could show me the report,
Sure.
please.
I've had Mark Joner as exhibit number 142. set of documents entitled Evidence and Property Record. Can I approach you?
Yes,
Showing you Exhibit 142. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
And could you tell us? Of evidence that were seized from the Menendez residence on August 20th, 1989.
To my best knowledge, yes.
And are there other documents in that package?
All pertaining to the same collection of evidence.
In other words, that packet of documents accurately reflects, number one, the items that were taken by you or people working under you that night, correct?
Correct.
And it also accurately represents where they were taken from in the room.
That's correct.
There are measurements in there that indicate accurately where each item was taken, correct?
That's correct.
Including the items that are depicted in the photographs that are behind you.
Yes.
Is that right? Now, turning your attention to the two wills, that's Exhibits 141 and 142.
Yes.
Who was named as the executor of each of those wills?
I'd have to review them again,
Do
please.
you have those in front of you?
I do not.
Perhaps you can point them to the paragraph.
Let me answer your question.
Yes.
Carlos and Teresita Peralt.
And is there also in each of the wills a provision that Lyle Menendez could be named executor of each of the wills upon his turning age 22?
That's correct.
And where did you, if you did, obtain those wills from? Did you physically get those from someone?
I physically got them. I'm not sure whether I got them from Mr. Goldberg, who's an attorney for the estate, or whether they were given to me by Mr. and Mrs. Peralt.
In other words, you interviewed both Mr. and Mrs. Peralt and the executor for the estate,
That's correct.
and either one or the other gave you a copy of those wills, correct?
That's correct.
And you read the wills, I take it?
I did.
And at some point, did you obtain any documentary evidence to indicate that Lyle Menendez exercised his rights under the will to become the executor?
I received no such information.
To your knowledge, does any such information exist?
Not to my knowledge.
Now, I think you said on December 5th, 1989, you took possession of the receipt from Howard Whitman, correct?
That's correct.
And you interviewed Howard Whitman on December 11th, is that true?
That's true.
Is it true that the day that you obtained the document from the Menendez residence with Howard Whitman's name on it, you had a search warrant in your possession?
That's correct.
And that was a search warrant authorizing you to go into the Menendez home and seize evidence of the computer and any documents such as the receipt with Mr. Whitman's name, correct?
That's correct.
Did you obtain that search warrant on that day, that is December 5th, 1989?
I did.
And you obtained that search warrant after an article was written in the Los Angeles Times on that very morning, correct? Indicating that there was some suspicion by members of your department that there was a problem with the will.
That's correct.
And that article in the Los Angeles Times would have been published the morning of December 5th before you obtained the search warrant?
That's correct.
And is it true that on the same morning after that article was published that you received an anonymous call from someone who apparently had read the article and said they had been...
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
This goes to his state of mind for the non-hearsay purpose of showing what he did
Then it's
after
irrelevant.
receiving the information.
The objection is sustained. The issue is what he did, not what information he had. Objection is sustained.
Did you receive, without going into the content of it, did you receive an anonymous call after that article appeared in the Los Angeles Times on December 5th?
I did.
And did the article itself indicate that your department was investigating the possibility of a second will being erased?
Yes.
And as a result of that article being published, did you feel it was important on that date to get a search warrant for the Menendez home?
Yes.
And did you, when you interviewed Mr. Whitkin later on the 11th, find out that he had been in the Menendez home on August 31st, 1989?
Yes.
And when you went to serve the search warrant on December 5th, did you find the receipt in plain view on the top of a television right next to the computer where Mr. Whitkin later told you he had been working?
It wasn't exactly right next to it, but I found it on the television probably 10 to 15 feet away from the computer.
And it was in plain view, was it not?
It was.
In other words, you didn't have to tear the house apart to find it. It was right there on the top of the television.
That's correct.
Said at some point you went to San Diego and retrieved the gun records, correct?
That's correct.
And in the store where you retrieved those gun records, were there surveillance cameras?
Yes.
So this is a very important point here, as Bright Eyes points out. Thank you so much for highlighting this, because I've been a little bit distracted and I missed this. Super important. Lyle could have become the executive of the estate after the killings, but he turned it down. So that would mean that he would be the one who was in charge of managing all of the estate, basically saying, like, this is where money go, well, you don't decide who the beneficiaries are. All of that is in the will already, or in the trust, whatever the document is that we're talking about. But there is some discretion that is up to the executor. If there's no one else to complain about these things, the executor can also just kind of make some extra expenses. And this is something that sometimes I dealt with as a trust and estates litigator, is sometimes the person who has been appointed the trustee or the executor is not the correct person, or maybe not the wisest person because of the things that they are doing with that power. So it is interesting if in fact he was named as the executor and he said, I am disavowing any power I have over the expenditures of this estate and the management of this estate. I don't want to have that control. I don't want to have that power. That is a fairly salient point for the jury to keep in mind, because it goes against that narrative that the prosecution wants the jury to adopt, which is that they did this for the money, that they killed their parents in cold blood, planning it ahead of time because they wanted that estate. They wanted their money, and they wanted them pushed aside so that they could just get all that money for themselves. So that's an interesting point and very good catch, Bright Eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting that.
And were those positioned above where the gun counter was?
Yes, they were.
You testified to various documents that you retrieved in the case, including the wills, correct?
That's correct.
Did you also at some point retrieve two purchase agreements which had previously been marked as exhibit number 56 and exhibit number 57 for two condominiums in New Jersey?
That's correct.
And do you remember when you received those documents?
I don't remember the date.
And I've had Marcus defendants next in order a purchase agreement and a cover letter dated March 29th, 1990.
That's exhibit 143.
Detective Zoller showing you exhibit 143. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
is that a cover letter that you received in the mail along with a purchase agreement which is attached to that for another condominium in New Jersey?
That's correct.
And is that a condominium that was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Menendez sometime in July or August of 1989?
That's correct.
And lastly, Detective Zoller showing you what has been marked exhibit number 144, which is a photograph, and exhibit 145, which is also a photograph. These two photographs accurately depict the interior of the Big Five gun store where you retrieved the gun purchase records that you've testified about,
Yes.
showing the placement of the surveillance camera.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Cross-examination on behalf of Erik Menendez.
I want to put up those photographs. Why don't I ask you first to look at 145? And it does appear from that photograph that the surveillance camera in the Big Five in San Diego points at the gun counter.
Yes.
And did you, when you were at this location, determine whether or not those cameras were meant to record gun purchases?
Yes, I did determine that.
Now, when were these photographs, what month and year were these two photographs taken by yourself?
Sorry, Matthews.
No, I
this is in-
took our photographer down to take them.
This is in front of both
When were
juries.
those photographs taken?
And Bronwyn W., I'm going to
Again, I'd
your
have
question.
to guess. It was after we obtained the gun records. I'm going to guess and say approximately 2 months afterwards,
May, perhaps,
perhaps.
but they were not taken in August
Of which year?
of any year.
That's correct.
Okay, so they were not taken at the beginning of the game hunting season, which begins in
That's
end of
correct.
August. Were you aware during the week of August 21st to August 26th that various members of the Menendez and the Anderson families were in Los Angeles?
Objection Vegas to which year?
1989.
I can only state that I know they were, that's a correct statement.
You did know they were here.
Yes.
And at the memorial service that you attended on Sunset Boulevard, did you meet and talk to members of the Menendez and the Anderson family?
No,
You didn't contact anyone there?
no, I did not.
Did you see Dr. Oziel there?
I didn't know who Dr. Oziel was at that time, and I saw a lot of people. I don't know whether I saw him or not because I didn't know who he was.
Did you, prior to the memorial service, meet with any of the family members either at the Elm Drive residence, at the Bellage Hotel, or at the Bel Air Hotel?
Could you repeat the question as far as,
I'd object to this being compound and ask to be broken.
All right, why don't you rephrase it?
Did you meet, first of all, did you meet with or talk to any of the Menendez and Anderson family members during that week of August 21st through August 26th, 1989?
yes,
And did you meet with any of these persons at the Elm Drive residence? Obviously excluding Erik and Lyle Menendez, okay?
at the Elm Drive residence, that's correct.
And do you recall who you met with there?
The only ones I can recall are Teresita Baralt, Carlos Baralt, and Maria Menendez, the grandmother.
Did you meet with or see any of the members of the family at the Bellage Hotel where they were staying?
I don't believe so, no.
Did you meet or see any members of the family at the Bel Air Hotel where they were meeting?
No.
Did you see any of them at the Beverly Hills Police Department?
In that period of time, I don't recall. I know that Carlos Baralt came to the police department, I believe, one time.
As of Labor Day, September 4th, 1989, were you already acquainted with Craig Signorelli?
Yes,
Had you left him a business card or
Signorelli.
some method by which to contact you when you made his acquaintance?
whether it was a business card or just give him my name and number, I did give him some method to get hold of me.
Thank you.
Shereen, I'd understand if he was afraid of Leslie.
Were you aware of the memorial service and funeral that was held in New Jersey?
Yes,
And do you know what day that was?
I believe it was the following Sunday,
Following what?
following the deaths and following the Los Angeles memorial service.
So it would have been the 29th? The 27th?
That, I believe so.
Did you attend the memorial service in New Jersey?
I did not.
Did anyone from your department attend?
No.
Were you aware of the fact that Erik and Lyle had left Los Angeles to go back to New Jersey
At what point?
prior to that memorial service in New Jersey?
Yes, I was aware of that.
Were you in contact with Erik or Lyle while they were in New Jersey after August 25th? Between August 25th and Labor Day?
No, I was not.
Were you in contact with any members of the family between August 25th and Labor Day?
Other than the phone,
No, even including the phone.
I don't believe so, no.
You indicated that you looked for shotguns, not for shotgun purchases, but for actual shotguns. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when did you first look for shotguns?
The exact date I don't recall. It was after the 8th of March of 1990.
When was it that you conducted this survey of gun stores within a 10-mile radius of Beverly? You mean, I guess, a 10-mile circumference around Beverly Hills?
That's correct.
Okay. When was it that you conducted that canvass of gun stores?
Between September of 89 and February of 1990. I don't have an exact date. It actually was a long, involved process that took many weeks.
You arrested Erik Menendez on March 11th, 1990.
That's correct.
Where did you arrest him?
At Los Angeles International Airport.
And was he, did you know he was going to be there? Was there an arrangement for you to meet him?
Yes, there was.
And was it your understanding that he was flying in from Europe to surrender to you?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Overruled.
That's correct.
You did not have any kind of extradition warrant for him or any extradition proceedings to bring him back from Europe, did you?
No,
He came voluntarily.
that's correct.
it was your understanding that at the point when Lyle was arrested, Erik was in Israel. Is that right?
That's correct.
And has Erik been in custody from that moment that you arrested him on March 11th, 1990 to this moment?
Yes.
I might have a moment, John. When you arrested Lyle Menendez, where was he physically?
I didn't physically arrest Lyle Menendez.
Other members of the Beverly Hills Police Department did?
That's correct.
Wasn't it, as the investigating officer, are you aware of where he was arrested?
Yes.
And wasn't it in Beverly Hills?
He was leaving the residence in Beverly Hills, yes.
The Elm Drive residence?
That's correct.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, just a moment. Just a couple questions. Detective Zoller, the property report that shows the collection of evidence which the defense marked as Exhibit 142, was that prepared by you or by someone else?
By someone else.
And you were asked by Mr. Bird if to your knowledge, Lyle Menendez had ever exercised his right to be the executor of the estate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
To your knowledge, were portions of the probate file sealed?
I have no knowledge of that.
You indicated that you went to a memorial service on August the 25th of 1989. Could you give us an approximation of how many people were at the memorial service?
I'm going to guess 100 to 200 people.
All right.
It's a good number of
And
people.
you were asked if you actually looked for the shotguns. Could you tell us what measures you took to actually go and locate shotguns, in this case, the physical shotguns?
With a group of officers from the Beverly Hills Police Department, we looked on either side of Mulholland Drive from approximately 1 mile east of Coldwater Canyon to approximately 5 miles west of Coldwater Canyon.
How many occasions have you gone out to Mulholland Drive looking for the guns?
Myself and other officers approximately 5 times.
And did you go as recently as this
I
spring?
would think
to
they
look
should
for
go
the
more
guns?
than that.
No.
Did you go to an area
I don't know.
where
Maybe
some new
not.
houses are being built this spring?
That's correct.
And did you again look for the shotguns?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Anything else?
I just have one question. Where are new houses being built on Mulholland?
Well, it's not on Mulholland. It's an area at the end of, I don't remember the street, whether it's a new development that goes to the backside of the development to Mulholland. It might be San Ysidro.
How far east or west of Coldwater is this area?
It's approximately a half mile west of Coldwater.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if council would approach briefly here.
Your Honor, could I ask the district attorney one question?
Sure.
It's interesting to me that they looked for the shotguns 5 times. They didn't go into detail of like what they did when they, or at least maybe I missed it. I want to know what
I have one more question.
what was involved in looking for the
Detective
shotguns.
Zoller, I believe you were asked on cross-examination about the cameras that are depicted in the photographs which have been marked by the defense.
That's correct.
Okay. And I believe you were asked to make a determination about them, but nobody asked you what the determination was. Could you tell us what the determination was about those cameras?
Well, Your Honor, I'm objecting to the question.
Yeah, nobody actually asked what happened with those cameras or whether pictures were taken, anything of that nature. So
Well, let me
you have
ask
to
him.
go into that, please.
Let me ask him.
I assume that's what you're asking.
Yes, Detective Zoller, did you know whether those were real cameras or fake cameras?
Yes, I determined that they were fake cameras.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there a sign on those cameras for the customers that says, these are fake cameras, we're not really taking your picture?
No, there is not.
Okay, and in looking at them from a layman's perspective, they look real, don't they?
That's the purpose. That's correct.
Did Big Five explain why they don't have real ones?
No, they did not.
We think they're just too cheap or something? Okay. I think we're-
All right, anything else?
No.
Okay, counsel, why don't you approach here and we'll discuss scheduling. All right, at this point, what I'm going to
Well, Big Five Sporting Goods is, I think, no longer around. So, I guess they were cutting corners and it still didn't matter in the long run.
do is excuse the Erik Menendez jury for a break of 10 minutes, 20 minutes to the hour, if you would return to the jury room, and hopefully by then we'll be able to proceed. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any opinions about it. And we'll resume with you in just over 10 minutes at 20 minutes to the hour. And we're going to remain in session here with the other jury for a little while. And so as soon as you leave, we'll continue on with our other matters here. We still have the Lyle Menendez jury in the courtroom and the defendants in court as well. Any further evidence to be offered by the prosecution?
Not at this time, Your Honor. The people of the state of California rest their case as to defendant Lyle Menendez.
All right, subject to the receipt of physical exhibits, the people rest. And therefore, as to the Lyle Menendez jury, what I'm going to do is excuse you until Monday at 10 a.m. and ask you to return to this courtroom or to your jury room at that time. And we'll be ready to proceed the defense portion of the case. It's very important at this point, as it has been throughout the trial, that you not discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else, not form any final opinions about it, and not permit yourselves to be exposed to anything related to this case outside of the courtroom. Remember, you must make your decision in this case based only on the evidence presented to you in the courtroom and my instructions on the law. Wish you all a good weekend and ask that you return Monday at 10 a.m.
Interesting.
All right, the jurors have left. There are still some evidentiary matters relating to the defendant, Erik Menendez, and specifically those areas that have been the subject of litigation today. These were matters that were presented to the court to permit the court to exercise its discretion under Section 352 of the evidence.
Okay, so this is going to be some evidentiary stuff. So as for Lyle Menendez's case, the prosecution has rested. The prosecution has not yet rested as to Erik Menendez's case, but that means we are just about at the halfway point, it seems. Maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic about that based on the overall length of this trial. But because it's like this goes on for a very long time. Yeah, we're in on Court TV's website. We are in installment number 28, and there are 121 total. So it seems that there is a lot to still go through here. But we are definitely making our way through this case. So I'm gonna start popping ahead to see if this is just like evidentiary hearing stuff here for the rest of this one. But then otherwise, if not, I'm gonna start on the next installment, and we'll just speed right along. Let's see here. Okay,
Code
so here,
to evaluate the evidence.
let's go here.
Had you been coaching him for about 6 months?
I think so. Yes.
And
Wait, let me go back a little bit. Okay, yes, this is.
Will now
Oh, what?
is a substantial amount of money, and it was done again within close proximity and time to the time the crimes occurred, and the court finds that again, the probative value of that evidence is substantial, and using the analysis under Section 352 of the Evidence Code, the court finds that the probative value substantially outweighs any potential of prejudice or confusion of issues or potential to mislead the jury, and therefore the court will permit that evidence as well. All right, we'll take a recess and we'll resume in 5 minutes with both juries,
Oh,
or with
okay.
the Erik Menendez jury, rather.
Okay. So,
Defendant's in court with his attorneys, people represented. Is there something that you want to discuss?
I just needed a ruling on the lease also.
Are the people pursuing that?
Yes, when I believe the defense will bring out that the purchase agreement was not consummated. They didn't actually go through with the purchase, and he ended up buying or leasing a condominium at the Marina City Club for $2,450 per month.
When?
November 9th, I believe. I've given the documents to counsel.
Just for the record, Ron, I object to their bringing out that you leased one. It's just the amount of money that I think is irrelevant,
okay.
particularly since Noel Medley,
All right. Let's skip
Value, the amount of the rent is substantial for the examiner.
Okay. Skip,
What I had intended to do in 29.
skip.
Hours long.
Okay.
This is in the jury.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
All the jurors are back in court, and we'll now resume with evidence relating to Erik Menendez. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Mark Heffernan.
Okay.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause found pending before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please take a stand and state your name.
Mark Heffernan,
Please raise your hand.
Hefffernan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Heffernan, in 1989, did you make a living teaching tennis?
Yes, I did.
And toward the beginning of 1989, did you?
Yes.
Mr. Heffernan, toward the beginning of 1989, did you become the coach of Erik and Lyle Menendez for tennis?
Yes.
Approximately.
My facial expression has nothing to do with what's going on screen. Andy, why? You're such a beautiful dog. Why do you do that? She helped herself to a litter box treat. It's awful. It's awful. Why? Why? Okay. All right. Ugh. I can't even reprimand her for it because she'll just be confused. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Okay, let's move on.
How often would you teach Erik Menendez per week?
Up to 6 hours a week,
And what did you charge per hour?
$55 an hour.
On August 18th, 1989, did you teach or did you have Erik Menendez as a student in a lesson?
Yes, I believe I did.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you recall the time period that Erik Menendez had a lesson on that particular day?
I believe it was in the morning between 9 and 12. It was 2 hours, either 9 to 11 or 9:30 to 11:30.
You became aware of the killings of the parents a couple of days later, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, after the killings of Jose and Mary Louise Menendez, did your relationship with Erik Menendez change with respect to the coaching that you did?
Well, there was a delay. There was a mourning period, and there was a lot of time with the family, and I had to respect that time. So there was a number of weeks, I believe, that they were going through the mourning period and also going back to New Jersey, if I remember correctly.
Sometime in October, did you resume lessons with Erik
Yes.
Menendez? And sometime in October or early November, did you have any discussions with Erik Menendez about full-time employment?
Yes, I did.
And would you relate for the jurors what the nature of the conversations were between you and Erik Menendez?
At that time, we thought of Erik going on the professional tennis circuit at the satellite level, and developing him as a professional tennis player.
And did you have direct discussions with Erik Menendez about being contractually bound to him exclusively?
Yes, I did.
At some point, did you then arrange with Erik Menendez to teach him exclusive to any other student?
He and his brother.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, how many students did you have at that point?
I believe between 15 and 25. It varies. It's a fickle business.
Now, at some point, or do you recall when it was that you started to put in full-time employment for Erik Menendez and his brother Lyle?
I would assume it was around the 1st of November. I'm not exactly sure of the dates.
And how much money were you getting paid?
I was getting paid $5,000 a month for one boy, or $6,000 for two if I worked with both of them.
Okay. With respect to Erik Menendez, what was the agreement? How much would he have to pay you per month?
$5,000.
How much time would you spend with Erik Menendez?
I would spend all day with him. 5.5, 6 days a week.
How many hours would that be per day?
8 to 10.
And had Erik Menendez requested this arrangement?
Erik and Marta, his aunt, and the contract was decided upon between the brothers and Marta and myself.
Was there a period of time that Lyle Menendez was also involved in this arrangement?
Yes, he was.
How long a period of time was that?
Basically the fall and until after the new year, I believe. But right after that, he got involved in business ventures, and he basically left and did those, and I worked with Erik exclusively.
Okay, and you believe that occurred about the beginning of 1990?
I think so. The dates are fuzzy. The time elements I'm not exactly sure of. But.
From that point on, then it was just an arrangement that you had to coach Erik Menendez exclusively?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Heffernan, your original contact with the Menendez family was in 1988, is that correct?
I believe it was.
And prior to the death of Erik's parents, had you been coaching him for about 6 months?
I think so. Yes.
And during those 6 months, was Erik attending Beverly Hills High School?
Yes, he was.
And was he on the Beverly Hills High School tennis team?
Yes, he was.
And was he training and being coached at the high school as well?
He was training at the high school. I don't know about the coaching, but he was training.
Okay, and there's a high school coach for the high school team, is that
Yes.
correct? And he would play in matches for the school, is
Yes.
that right? Now, he was also playing, to the best of your knowledge, in matches that were part of the United States Tennis Association authorized competitions.
Yes, he was.
And so over the entire course of a year, he would compete in different matches.
Yes.
And apart from the times that you were coaching him, were you aware of the fact that he was also practicing on his own?
He was practicing at the school nearly every day. 5 days a week, he'd have practices after school, except if he got an exemption to play with me.
So he'd either practice after school at the school or he'd practice with you
Yes.
during school days.
Yes.
Was it also your understanding and your observation that he would practice on the weekends?
Absolutely.
All day on the weekends?
No.
And was it also your understanding that he would have matches to practice with other young men besides practicing with you?
Yes.
When you would coach Erik, would you do it at his home?
Nearly exclusively at his home.
They had a tennis court at the house.
Yes, they did.
And when you would, and we're still talking about that period of time before his parents died. When you would coach him at the home, if Mr. or Mrs. Menendez were at home, would they observe what you were doing?
Most of the time they would. Especially Jose. He wasn't there often, and when he was home, he always watched. Or I can't say always, but quite often.
When, in 1988 and 1989, before August 20th, who paid you for the lessons?
The mother.
And your rate was $55 an hour, correct?
Yes.
And were there some weeks when you would spend more time, give more hours of coaching to Erik, and other weeks when you'd give less?
Absolutely, yeah.
And would that depend on, first of all, whether he was in town versus traveling in tennis matches?
In town and his schedule in general. I mean, it was all up to him. If I was available, I would coach him. If he had things to do, it was variable week to week.
And basically, you were fitting your coaching in around his school time, correct?
Yes.
He was in school full time, as far as you.
Yes, he was.
Now, did you also in 1988 and 1989, before August 20th, give lessons to and coach Lyle?
Yes, I did.
Was Lyle a more talented tennis player than Erik?
Lyle, I would have to say, was at the time. He was more mature physically, and I would assume mentally and emotionally, and he'd been training longer. Their ultimate developmental level, I think they could have each risen to the same place given a serious amount of training.
And how high a place did you think they could have each risen to given a serious amount of training?
Well, I think at some level they could have been professional tennis players. Now, it's hard for me to extrapolate down the road where they could break through. They could have been world class. In the top 50 or 100 players in the world, depending on the seriousness of their intent. But that was hard to determine.
Okay. Is it hard work to become a professional tennis player?
Very.
Does it take a lot of exertion and stamina and hours and practice and physical pain?
Absolutely.
Now, after Mr. and Mrs. Menendez died, you said there was a period when you were not coaching Erik, when he was in mourning and he was spending time with his family, and he didn't contact you for coaching. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you see Erik during that period?
Yes, I saw him a few days after the killings at the Bel Air Hotel, briefly. And then I saw him in New York City. I was at a national coaches convention in Manhattan, and he happened to be there for the U.S. Open, watching the U.S. Open, and he came to my hotel and saw my wife and I. And
did he appear to be in mourning?
Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
Now, at some time in October, you started having discussions with Erik and his Aunt Marta.
Yes.
And those discussions were focused on whether Erik should try to become a professional tennis player, or at least try to get involved in the professional tour.
Yes, he was very interested in doing that.
Now,
So I'm just going to pause it there real quick because, this is actually pretty important for the defense's case here, at least as to Erik Menendez, because they want to make it very clear to the jury that he had a life ahead of him. Lyle Menendez had a life ahead of him. They actually could have gone quite far as tennis professionals, according to this witness anyway, right? This witness that had been coaching them. And I guess specifically coaching Erik. And that's important because it's like, why would someone throw all of that away for an inheritance if they are able to, if they have a path ahead of them to really make it on their own as adults in the world, that they can kind of make their own name for themselves. They have this path ahead of them, and that is through professional tennis. If they have that, why would they do something so reckless, like offing their parents for their inheritance? It's a bit of a rebuttal narrative.
Kind of tennis training that's required for that professional tour, is it very structured?
I tried to make it structured. I don't think that a young athlete now, especially with Erik's history, he wasn't coming from being the best junior tennis player in the country. So he had to have it more structured in order to have a chance to really develop. That was my impression.
So you were designing what could be called a highly structured program for him?
Very.
Did he express to you, after his parents died, a need for structure, a need for order and stability?
I don't think he expressed that to me. I felt it.
And so strike that. Isn't it true that there were a whole series of discussions and negotiations between yourself and Erik and Aunt Martha and Lyle prior to the signing of the contract that you've testified to?
Yes, there was. That's fair to say.
Okay, and at some point, even an Attorney Goldberg, got involved and further negotiated with you on the terms of the contract.
Yes.
And did you start coaching Erik full-time even before the contract itself was signed?
I believe I did. Mm-hmm.
And do you recall, excuse me, whether the contract itself, by its terms, began in January of 1990?
By its terms, it began in January, yes.
And do you think for a month, possibly 2 months before that, you were operating under the terms of the contract, even though the contract itself had not been written?
Yes.
And both before the contract was signed and afterwards, how frequently were you being paid?
Once every 2 weeks, I believe.
And you were being paid $5,000 a month, so that would be $2,500 every 2 weeks.
That's correct. At the time, initially, I was being paid $3,000 a month because Lyle was working with us.
So in the beginning, you were coaching both Erik and Lyle.
Yes.
And then at some point, Lyle left the program and Erik remained.
That's correct.
Now, who wrote the checks that paid you?
I'm not sure. It came from a bank back east, I believe, but I'm not sure who signed the checks.
It's a little weird.
Something I can't remember.
Okay, so you don't know if he signed the checks.
No, I don't know that.
They came from an Eastern bank.
Yes.
Do you even know if it was an account of Erik's or someone else's account?
I'm not quite sure about that. I think it was a trust account, and that's all I can remember.
And you don't know who the trustee was or what
No,
the
I
name
don't.
of the trust? Do you think it might have been, I'll strike that. Were you aware at the time that Erik's Aunt Martha was handling all of his money?
I think I was aware of that, yes.
And she was paying all of his bills, making all of his purchases?
To the best of my recollection.
Raquel
Okay.
Becks, this
And
is
that's,
exactly what the defense
his Aunt
wants
Martha
the jury
is
to be
Martha
thinking
Cano,
about.
Yes,
and you understood that she was Jose Menendez's sister.
yes, I did.
Now, at some point, did you become aware of the fact that Erik moved to an apartment at the Marina City Club?
Yes, I did.
And was the Marina City Club a facility that had tennis courts and a gym?
Yes, it did.
And as part of your regimen, this training for the professional circuit, did it include physical training, such as you'd need a gym and weight machines and that kind of thing?
Comprehensively.
comprehensively?
Hey,
Yes.
Kurt.
Really hard work, I
Good
gather.
to see
Well,
you.
I interviewed different weight training coaches, and we found one that we thought would work the best with the boys, and it was pretty pronounced training. They did
Okay.
our-
And did you conduct this training with Erik at the Marina City Club using their facilities?
Yes, I did.
And had you explained to Erik, even before he moved to the Marina City Club, the nature of the training program you had in mind,
Yes, I did.
and that it would include weight training?
It included many things.
And did you suggest to him in looking for a place to live, he should try to find a place that had all the facilities he needed for your training program?
I don't think I suggested that. I think they had decided and suggested it to me.
Okay. And did that sound like an appropriate place for you to do the training that you needed to do?
It did. It was close to where they had lived and their friends, and it seemed to be a pretty complete facility.
Now, you've indicated that during the period before Mr. and Mrs. Menendez were killed, you didn't see Mr. Menendez very frequently at the house?
No, I didn't. He worked in the daytime except when he had meetings there, and I was always there in the daytime.
Okay. But you did see Mrs. Menendez there, did you not?
Yes, I did.
And did she seem sad and lacking in energy to you when you saw her?
She did. Yes, she did.
You said that you saw Erik after his parents died at the Bel Air Hotel, correct?
Yes,
Did you see Dr. Jerome Oziel there?
I
Oh.
did.
Oh, no.
And was there anything about his behavior there that you noticed?
Objections beyond the scope and calls for speculation.
Be more specific as to what you're asking. The objection as far as beyond the scope is overruled.
Okay. Did you see the way Dr. Oziel was behaving with respect to Erik and Lyle and the family members?
Objection vague and ambiguous.
Do you understand the question?
Yes, I do.
Objection overruled.
When I walked into their suite, he
Right,
was.
your answer is yes, you did observe that.
Yes, I did.
Did you observe?
So, and to Kit Kat, to answer your question, is that speculation? She's not asking to speculate, or she's not asking him to talk about like what Dr. Oziel was thinking or feeling or anything like that. She has limited her question to just his observable behavior. So it's not speculation, and it's something that he can actually answer. And also, now that I am remembering to answer questions, Braun and W, I'm so sorry. I saved this earlier, like, I don't know, like a half an hour ago. So I might as well answer it now. Once he waived the right to be executor, is that it, or could he have asked for that in a year or two? By that point, so what happens is, when you open up probate, you have to set up that's like one of the first things that has to be determined is like who's in charge here, right? Like who's the point person that the judge is going to be talking to throughout this process of figuring out what goes where. And so that's the executor. So that's like the first thing that's decided. So if somebody says, I don't want to be the executor, and then later on decides, no, actually, I do want to be the executor, they would have to file a petition with the court, and they would have to explain why they think that they should be the executor and the other person should not. And it's like, it really has to be a really good reason, especially if that person had already rejected the role before. The court is going to look at things a little bit skeptically, I think, and say like, why do you suddenly want this responsibility now? Because it's a role that has a lot of responsibility, but it also has a lot of power. So, it's possible you have executors that are acting in the role and decide they don't want to be the executor anymore, so they walk away, they ask for a replacement. That person could come up then, if that executor that initially took on the role has already said, like, I need someone to replace me, that reluctant person from the who had previously rejected it could say, like, okay, if there's no one else, I'll do it. Like, that's a situation that it would, it would happen maybe successfully. But otherwise, if the person who rejected the role later on came back and said, actually, I want this role, but the person that is the executor that was, determined to be the executor in that interim, if they say, like, no, I'm not interested in not, in stepping away from this role, there's a fight. And the person who is already in place as the executor is likely to win unless they're doing something wrong, something very wrong. So that's that. But thank you for the question. Very interesting. Okay, let's continue on.
Of Dr. Oziel behaving in a sort of overbearing and domineering way?
Yes, I did. I could say that.
Do you recall, strike that, concerning your training of Erik, once he moved to the Marina City Club, would you go there early in the morning and get him up and then work with him all day long?
Yes, I would.
Did he tell you during that period of time that he was having bad dreams?
Welcome back to Bike Club.
Yes.
Not Sarah Lee.
Was there a particular day in November of 1989 that he told you it was the first day he didn't cry since the death of his parents?
Yes, I believe he said that to me.
Based on your knowledge of Erik before his parents died, did he ever indicate to you in any way, by anything he said or did, that he had any particular interest in money or material things? State of mind, Your Honor.
Calls for conclusion on the part of the witness. Objection sustained.
Well, did you ever hear him express any interest in obtaining money at that stage of his life?
No, I can't say that I did.
Mr. Heffernan, you have a PhD, do you not?
Yes.
In
I do.
what?
In clinical psychology?
You're a sports psychologist as
Yes.
well as a coach, are you not?
Yes.
And as a layperson, do you think that you are qualified, based on your interaction with people, to form an opinion as to whether someone appears to be materialistic or not?
Qualified.
Excuse me?
Qualified. I would guess I was as qualified as anybody else.
Exactly. And did Erik Menendez ever strike you as being materialistic?
Objection sustained.
May we approach, Your Honor? Tired of approaching you.
There's no reason to approach.
Now, after, strike that, during the period of time when you were operating under this contract to coach Erik and for some time Lyle exclusively, did it appear to you as a coach and a sports psychologist that Erik had difficulty concentrating?
Yes, he did have that.
You were with Erik in Israel, were you not?
I was.
And when you were with him in Israel, did he appear to be extremely lonely?
That would be fair to say.
Real quick, Cherry C. Mills, thanks for the member chat in the chat. Can't bring it up on StreamYard because StreamYard is funky like that. And Aaron Morgan also with a member chat says, really love being part of Bike Club. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being a part of Bike Club. And thank you to everybody that is a member of Bike Club. You guys really do. The support really does help with the channel, especially when we're doing stuff like this that is not exactly as like, I mean, right now there's every once in a while there's new things happening with the appeal on this trial, but but it's it's not exactly like, it's not like the Depp trial, where you have like a million people that are interested in getting this right now. This is a little bit more niche. So like, this kind of stuff, it really helps having that bike club support from folks for these kinds of projects too. Okay. Anyway. Oh, and also there's you know what, before I move on, there is another question. B and Mindy T, thanks so much for the question, says, could the executor potentially be ill for say 6 months and within that 6 months have someone replace them and then come back? I mean, it would depend on the illness and if they are able to continue in that role despite their illness and despite whatever treatments they're going through. I wouldn't say that any court would look at that as like a default of like, oh, you're not perfectly healthy, like, sorry, you can't be the executor. But they usually are going to look at overall the overall circumstances of a person in determining whether they're a right fit to be executor, or I mean, not or a trustee. Well, sometimes a trustee, if there is a question as to who should be trustee. So because sometimes it's just very clear and it's just kind of like a default. There's not much conversation about it. But if there's a question, if there's like two people that want the role, but only one of them can be it, usually the person that's chosen is going to be the one that is generally most suited for the role given the overall circumstances. So yeah. But I mean, if someone is ill for 6 months, they know that they have a 6-month treatment going on. I don't know. It would depend on the circumstances beyond what I've already kind of explained. And also Ardo Risman with a member chat says me. Notice me. Thank you, Ardo, and thank you for always bringing the jokes. Oh,
You
man.
feel that during that period in Israel that Erik seemed to be emotionally disintegrating?
Objection sustained.
Did his emotional state did he seem to get more and more emotionally upset, depressed, sad during that period that you were with him in Israel?
I would say that he would be, he couldn't commit as well. That's how I would phrase it. He couldn't commit
to speak up a little. Even with the mic, I can barely hear you.
He wouldn't commit to the training quite as much as he had before. He was feeling a range of emotions that would be integrated. I'd say there was many emotions he was feeling.
And that seemed to be interfering with his ability to commit himself to the training?
Yes, it would.
You worked with both Erik and Lyle for some period of time in 1988, 1989, correct?
Correct.
In comparing them, just based on personalities, would you say that Erik was more sensitive, more artistic, and less self-confident than Lyle?
Objection sustained.
After the deaths of their parents, did you ever see any signs of happiness in Erik?
Objection, vague and ambiguous.
Rephrase the question, please.
Did you ever see Erik acting like he was happy-go-lucky, carefree after his parents died?
Same objection.
Overruled.
Yes, I did.
When was that?
Different times, not a lot of them, but there were times.
Did you talk to him after he met his girlfriend, Miss Terlesky?
Noelle?
Yes, Noelle Terlesky. I'm using the last name for a reason. I'll tell you in a minute.
Did I talk to him?
I mean, did you see him after he knew her?
Oh, absolutely.
And did his relationship with her seem to improve his spirits?
Yes,
Sustained.
Well, it's foundational to asking another question. Well, never mind.
Let's get to the next one then.
Was
Objection
that when-
sustained. The answer is stricken. If there
Was
wasn't.
that when you saw Erik being more happy after he met that young woman?
That was some of the time. He was happy before he met the young woman as well, on occasion.
Do you recall what those occasions were?
We shared some fond moments in New York.
That was with you?
That was with my wife and I and Erik.
Did Erik have a good relationship with your wife?
I think he did.
Seems like he
Were there
genuinely cares
occasions, or
about
at
Erik.
least one occasion, when you went to Erik's apartment at the marina to wake him up and found him crying?
He had the door closed for the most part in the mornings, and he would take longer some mornings than others to rouse himself. So he would come out a little deflated in emotion occasionally.
But my question was whether you ever found him crying.
In the morning, no, I can't say that I did.
Did you tell Miss Lansing in an interview with her on July 18th, 1992, that you would go to the apartment at the marina to wake Erik up, and on occasion you found him crying?
I found him crying one particular afternoon when he
Okay.
was reading a letter, I think, from his brother.
He was reading a letter from his brother.
Mhm.
Is that yes?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, he strikes me as somebody that has genuine concern and care for Erik as like a sort of a mentor and father
Now,
figure.
you've testified that you believe you gave Erik a tennis lesson on Friday, August 18th, 1989.
I believe that I did.
Okay. Now, ordinarily, did you keep an appointment book that indicated all of your coaching appointments?
Yes, I kept it, in the moment. I saved the appointments for a few months, and if there was no important notes, I discarded them.
And you no longer have that appointment book?
No, I don't.
And have you had anything, any writing of any kind to refresh your recollection as to when you gave that tennis lesson to Erik just before his parents died?
Writing? No, not writing.
Is there something about, well, we strike that and ask this. Did you also coach Lyle that day, or was it just Erik that you gave the lesson to?
I believe it was Erik.
And you believe it was Friday morning?
Yes.
And ordinarily, would you do your coaching in the morning with Erik?
Ordinarily, there wasn't an ordinary time with Erik.
Was that you would just fit in as much time as you
Yes.
could? If you coached on the weekends, would that tend to be in the morning?
It would be when Erik was available.
Okay. Now, was there something about that last coaching date before the parents died that makes you believe it occurred on Friday,
Yes.
August 18th?
Yes, there
Would
was.
you tell us what that was?
I was seeing what their schedule would be for the weekend, and he said, "Well, we're not going to be taking a lesson tomorrow because we're going fishing with our parents."
So this is Erik said, I can't take a lesson tomorrow. Would it be
Yes.
Saturday because we're going fishing with our parents?
And I believe he said he would call me on Sunday to let me know what we were doing for either the rest of the weekend or next week.
Did he call you on Sunday?
No, he did not. Actually, that's not correct. He called me at 10 minutes to 12 at night.
Yes, I know. He called you
Mhm.
after the parents were killed, correct?
Mhm.
And in fact, you went to the police station and were
Yes.
talked to that morning. Have a moment, John.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Heffernan. I have nothing further on it.
Any redirect?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Heffernan, when you saw Erik Menendez on the 18th of August, how did he appear to you? Was it just a regular practice session?
Yes.
Nothing remarkable about him on that date?
I can't say that I remember that if there was anything remarkable.
Now, would you say that Erik Menendez, when you were coaching him, was a strong athlete,
Yes, I would.
an aggressive athlete,
Yes.
very driven?
Driven, but I'll qualify the very.
Very intense on the court?
Could be very intense.
He's about 6 feet tall,
Yes.
strong,
Strong.
and so was Lyle.
Yes, he was.
Both pretty aggressive.
I'm gonna
And the
object to
tennis
that,
court.
John.
Objection overruled.
I mean, if it's modified by tennis court, I withdraw the objection.
That's what you're referring
Yes,
to?
right.
Yes, they were both aggressive athletes.
You had indicated that there were times that you saw Erik Menendez after the killings that he was happy, appeared to be happy. Was one of the times when he met this Noel Terleski?
Yes, it was.
Were you aware that Erik Menendez bought himself a new Jeep in October of 1989?
Yes, I was.
Did he appear to be happy after that with the Jeep?
That would be fair to say.
Okay. You indicated that there was a condominium that you visited in Marina del Rey at the Marina City Club.
Objection,
that-
Your Honor, that's question.
Let's clarify that.
Okay. What was your understanding of the residence of Erik Menendez at the Marina City Club? What was that?
He and his brother rented 2 apartments
Side by side?
side by side.
Okay. How many bedrooms did Erik have in his apartment?
I think 3, 2 or 3.
Was it a nice apartment?
Very nice.
Did it have nice furnishings?
Yes, it did.
Did he have a lot of CDs?
Your Honor, I think this is somewhat-
Did he have a lot of CDs? That newfangled technology CDs? Sorry. I just like anytime we have a reference to technology, I just find it so funny because it's like all of the things that he's pointing to right now with his questions are like, he got this fancy apartment. It's 3 bedrooms. It's in Marina del Rey, which is an expensive area, and it's furnished very nicely. And oh, did he have a bunch of CDs? It's funny because it's like, okay, like transporting ourselves to 1993, like that's like, ooh, like who can afford CDs? But today it's like, who wants CDs? Okay, anyway.
Overruled.
I think he did.
Did he appear to be happy with his new apartment?
Yes, he was happy with it.
Were you aware that he had purchased a pool table for himself in November of 1989?
Yes, I was aware of that.
Was he pretty happy about that?
I think he would be happy about that. Mhm.
Did you notice Erik Menendez's spending? You had spent some time with him before the killings of his parents, correct?
Your Honor, I'm gonna
Correct.
object to this is beyond the scope.
Overruled.
You may answer, Mr. Heffernan.
Correct.
Did his spending change after the killings? Type of spending that he did that you saw?
It changed somewhat. He all of a sudden had access to buy what he wanted, so it
Now-
did change.
This $5,000 per month that Erik Menendez, for Erik Menendez's lessons,
Your Honor, actually,
On the next question.
on this line of question, given the court's previous ruling.
All right, you may approach.
So it'll jump to after the approach, but Bright Eyes had an interesting point. They weren't living in a shack before, so I don't see the big deal about the condos. Yeah, it doesn't land for me personally either, even though they're these really nice condos and it's 3 bedrooms. It's not like a tiny little apartment. It's, you know, it's a substantial apartment. But you know, considering the fact that they did grow up in mansions, that also, I agree with you. It doesn't feel like that dramatic of a jump. There is something to be said for like them suddenly using all of this freedom to buy things that they couldn't buy before because their parents were very tight on what they could spend money on. But I think in terms of what they've bought, they have certain tastes that they have been used to by growing up the way that they grew up. So I do agree with you on that.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Heffernan, you indicated on cross-examination that you saw the parents watching practices, most particularly, I guess, Jose would watch practices.
Occasionally, yes.
Did he appear to be interested in his son?
Yes, he did.
Did you ever see either Mr. or Mrs. Menendez at any tournaments that Erik Menendez was involved in?
Yes, I did.
Did they appear to be supportive?
Yes, they did.
When you were paid, before you were paid $5,000 a month, did you indicate that Mrs. Menendez would pay the $55 fee?
Yes, she did.
She paid you by check?
Yes.
Did you actually see any interaction between Mr. Menendez and Erik Menendez at any matches that you witnessed yourself?
Yes, I did.
What sort of interaction did you see?
I saw different interactions.
Did you see any interaction of support by Jose Menendez?
Overruled.
I would think that he was supportive. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did you see any actions that Jose Menendez took toward his son after any matches?
Yes, I did.
What did you see?
One particular time comes to mind where Erik was playing a very good player in like the third round or quarterfinals of a tournament, and Jose afterwards took him aside as soon as he came out of the gates of the tennis court and was talking to him with his arm around him, but firmly. And I felt at the time that maybe this was, I wish he had given Erik some space. That's what my feeling was. But it could be construed as both support and firmness.
As a coach for many years, you indicated having students, 15 to 25 students, before you had the exclusive relationship with Erik Menendez. Did you see other parents of good caliber tennis players acting the same way toward their kids, that is supporting them and being interested in coming to their lessons?
I object to that, it's irrelevant.
Sustained. Objection sustained.
Was in your profession, had you seen other parents that were also interested in their children?
Objection.
Objection sustained.
Yeah, that's not exactly relevant. I mean, I get what Kuriyama is doing. Like, I get what Kuriyama is doing. He's trying to say, like, okay, yeah, Jose Menendez was tough on his kids, but he was no more tough on his kids than any of the other parents were that had their kids playing at this level. You'll see that with a lot of parents that have their kids in sports at an elite level. You know, like a lot of times you'll see the parents are like, you know, helicopter parents, so to speak. They're really involved, very emotionally invested. And that's not always the case. I know of some examples in my own life of parents with kids that are performing in sports at an elite level, at a national level, that are just like, you do you, boo boo. But I feel like that's a little bit more rare. But still, in terms of evidence, it's not exactly relevant in terms of like if all of the other parents are abusive, that doesn't excuse Jose Menendez for being abusive.
Erik Menendez in Israel, is that correct?
That's correct.
Was there a time that Erik Menendez received a call that his brother had been arrested in the United States for the murder of his parents?
Objection, hearsay.
You lay a foundation, please.
Yes. Were you with Erik Menendez at any time in Israel where he indicated to you that he had received a call concerning the fact that his brother had been arrested for the murder of their parents?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. It is beyond the scope, and I'd like to approach this previous ruling.
All right, you may approach.
Mr. Heffernan, do you know what the letter was about from Lyle Menendez to Eric Menendez?
No, I don't.
That's your false or hearsay.
All right, the answer is he doesn't. Objection.
Your Honor, I have nothing further at this time.
Okay.
Recross?
Mr. Heffernan, did Eric seem to have all the disposable money he needed before his parents died?
I think he had adequate disposable money.
Do you recall telling Miss Lansing on July 18th, 1992, that the boys were used to having all of the disposable income that they needed?
I don't recall that, but I could imagine saying that.
Well, does that seem to be the truth?
I don't think they did without.
Right. And was it your experience with them that they both spent a lot of money before their parents died and they spent money after their parents died?
That'd be fair to say.
And did it seem to you that they, before their parents died, that Eric seemed to have everything that he needed? He didn't want for anything, did he?
I don't think he wanted for anything.
And he didn't complain about needing more of anything, did he?
Calls for hearsay.
Overall.
I didn't hear him complain.
And he had a lot. I mean, when it came to tennis, he had all the tennis clothes and tennis equipment and tennis rackets that he could use, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He had a car of his own.
I believe he did.
You used the term, when you made this observation of Mr. Menendez with his arm around Eric being firm. Is firmness the equivalent of critical?
It could be.
Was it on that occasion?
I think he was trying to have Eric see that he could have played a more creative match.
So he was criticizing his performance, basically, telling him he didn't play the way he thought he should have.
Misstates the evidence, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Was he telling him that? Was he telling Eric that Eric hadn't played the match the way Jose thought he should have or could have?
I believe that's correct.
Now, concerning this, the things that you observed Eric being happy about, did you ever observe him being happy about the death of his parents?
No, I did not.
Concerning Erik and Lyle, did it appear to you from the very beginning when you started coaching them that they had been professionally trained, professionally coached for a long time before you got there?
I think this has been asked and answered.
Not before the jury, Your Honor.
Okay, then you're correct. Objection overruled. You can
Thank
answer.
I believe it would appear that they had been professionally trained.
And that would lead you to conclude that there had been professional paid coaches in their background before you came along.
Yes.
And you said in response to Mr. Kuriyama's questions that both Erik and Lyle were aggressive athletes. Is that a positive attribute in a tennis player?
It can be.
Did you ever see Erik aggressive in any other way? Did you ever see him physically aggressive with people?
In play only.
Did he ever complain to you about his parents?
Objection sustained.
Did he ever say anything negative to you about his parents?
Objection is hearsay.
No, it goes to state of mind, given the people's theory.
Well, counsel, let's not argue the matter.
Okay.
Can we have a time frame in which you're asking this question?
Well, before they died, which would be 1988. When do you think you started coaching around? Was it around November of 1988?
It was in the early winter, somewhere in there. Yes.
Okay, of 88, and up until the parents died in August. So that would be less than a year.
Yes.
During that year, did Erik ever say anything negative about his parents?
I can't remember if he did. It doesn't come to mind.
Thank you. I have nothing for you.
All right, any redirect rather.
Just a couple of questions, Your Honor. Mr. Heffernan, were you aware that Erik Menendez received an allowance of $180 a month? That's what his allowance was?
I wasn't aware of that.
Okay. And at the time that you first met him, was he driving a Ford Escort?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So isn't it true that you, in a report dated July 12th, 1993, that you indicated that he seemed to, yes, page 3 of 3 of the report, July 12th, 1993. It's the last sentence. Mr. Heffernan,
I
Did
would
you-
ask rather than hearsay, Your Honor, that Mr. Triana just asked the question.
Objection overruled. Why don't you go ahead?
thank you, Your Honor. Did you indicate that Erik Menendez seemed to spend a lot more money on a much larger scale after the deaths of his parents?
Larger scale, absolutely.
Thank you. No further questions.
Anything else? All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused.
Thank you.
It's possible that you'll be recalled, but thank you at this point.
Okay.
And did you have any brief stipulations you wanted to recite at this point, or?
Well, actually, let me just go ahead.
All right. Okay. As far as the case of People versus Erik Menendez, we're fairly close to the end of the People's case. They have, at this point, it's my understanding, one more witness that they'll be calling, or two, perhaps, two witnesses. And there's some stipulations or agreements that both sides have entered into that will be recited to the jury on Monday morning. And
Just for a second on scheduling.
yes, and then I'll give you a little more information regarding the next phase of the case, the defense phase of the case. I'll talk to the lawyers about their concerns as far as scheduling here. All right, just to get back with you, ladies and gentlemen, we'll resume at 9 o'clock on Monday. We have witnesses lined up, things are ready to go. So as soon as everyone is here, we'll start up with the testimony. And after that, there'll be a break. It's unclear how long.
Okay. So we can basically skip that. Andy's not here, so I'll take that off the screen. Okay, so I think we're going to end that here today, even though I kind of want to just like finish through the next two witnesses to finish the prosecution's case in chief officially, but we're at about 3 hours now. So I don't know how long the next couple witnesses are going to take before we close the prosecution's case in chief. So I don't want it to go on for like hours more today if it's going to be taking a little bit longer. But this means that next Monday, we will be closing up, buttoning up the prosecution's case in chief. I'm excited because I did see, was it Bright Eyes in the chat that was saying that the defense case in chief is longer? It's actually a lot longer than the prosecution's, but the witnesses are more interesting. So I will take it. If the witnesses are more interesting, then that will that'll make it all worthwhile. So yeah, it's been a good one. We watched a little bit of an evidentiary hearing, so I think that we will be hearing from the estate attorney again at some point soon, probably. Maybe that's one of the last two witnesses that we will be hearing from. I think one of them that we kind of zipped through today, that was one of the witnesses was Valerie Hart. During one of the hearings, we kind of zipped through it. She will be I know that she's one of the next witnesses to testify. I think she is the next witness to testify. So we will be hearing from her. She's a real estate agent. And then I guess who is after her? Let me see here. And Marta Cano, the sister of Jose Menendez. Oh. Okay. And I guess Detective Zoller will be back. He's just like sprinkled in every other day, it seems like, or almost every day at this point. So, okay, well, that about does it. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thank you so much for joining me as always. This has been lovely, and thank you to the chat for being wonderful and chatty as always. And thank you to the mods for helping to guide the conversation forward as always. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming and hanging out and watching this trial with me. We'll see if anything comes of that habeas corpus petition. And I'm going to see if I can try to find the actual filing itself and take a look at it, because I don't know that I got the full picture from that CNN article that we got. That's usually the case with these articles. But anyway, to those of you, I've got a video coming out. Tomorrow it'll be in the morning. It'll be accessible for supporters on Patreon and locals. And then I think in the afternoon, I'll probably make it accessible to everybody else. But I've been working on it for weeks. So keep an eye out for that. And then otherwise, if you are a member of Bike Club, I will hopefully see you on Friday for the Bike Club member stream. And yeah, otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.